and Facebook. I'll do that now, though.
You can broadcast it on Instagram and
Hi,
Facebook.
everyone. Welcome to the Katie Halper Show. As always, we like to start like mid-chat. It's really actually, I think it's my signature move. But yeah, you can't, well, I'll get to that in a second. I was just telling Ron, my two guests are Rania Khalek and Briahna Joy Gray. You know them, you love them. They're regulars on the show. And Briahna Joy Gray is a writer and, of course, was the press secretary for Bernard Sanders for president. And Brie is a journalist. Sorry. And Rania is a journalist. You're both journalists. But Rania, you are a lot on video a lot. Mm-hmm. What's wrong with me? I'm really tired, guys, in case you couldn't tell. Here's the deal. Ready?
Okay.
It's what?
It's Thanksgiving week.
It's like Thanksgiving week. Yeah. Kind of week. I'm gonna have, and I haven't even drunk my wine yet. So cheers, everyone. We decided we'd have some drinks. Yeah. So cheers. Okay, let me start over. Ready? Briahna Joy Gray is a writer. She's also the co-host with Virgil Texas of the Bad Faith Pod, which is a podcast and also sometimes video. And
moving more and more toward that.
And Rania Khalek is a journalist, and she's with the outlet The Soapbox, and she's in a lot of videos. You've seen her in viral videos. And Brie, you are also in videos, including not just Bad Faith stuff, but you were in one of the Gravel Institute videos. I had them on last week. So
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah. So welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you for having us.
Of course. And you don't have to spend any money to support this show right now. You can just like and subscribe and share it. And I forgot to Instagram this and Facebook it. So let me just take a photo. And this is like some cool meta stuff. I'm going to, let's see. I'm going to just do a live thing where I tell people right now to watch. Let's see, live. Want to flip that around.
Should we look like we're doing something super exciting so people have to tune in?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So right now I'm on Periscope. Guys, everyone, why are you saying refresh? Okay, I got to not look at the comments. Yeah, do it. Let's do it. So I'm on, hi guys, make sure you come to YouTube so you can see me talk to Briahna Joy Gray and Rania Khalek, two very good ladies. Let me see. I'm going to flip it around right now. You can actually see them. There they are. Oh, you see a lot of open windows.
Hi, Katie, can I plug something?
You may see that I have something called tabitis. Yes, plug away.
I just want to plug away. Also, I'm hosting a new podcast called Left Bitches.
Yes, right. Rania is also
Left Bitches.
Rania is also hosting a podcast called Left Bitches, right, which everyone to check out. So, guys, if I'm talking to you right now on Periscope, you know what to do. Come down to YouTube, youtube.com/The Katie Halper Show. Great shows, great episodes, great show tonight. And we will see you at the YouTubes. Okay, bye. That was fun. Okay, stop broadcast. All right, great. So, and now you guys are really good at Instagram. And then Rania's going to train us.
I'm doing it now.
Okay, great. Rania has to train us in TikTok.
God.
Yeah, but Rania, will you still be doing... What'd you say? No, you're really good at it, though.
You're the youth among us.
You are. We could be your grandmothers. Rania, will you still be doing unauthorized disclosure that people want to know?
Yeah, I'm also doing unauthorized disclosure. I'm just like, we actually moved to a different, we're moving to something called Rockfin on unauthorized disclosure.
What's it called?
Rockfin. It's like,
oh yeah, what is that? I've heard of that.
Like another version of Patreon that is supposed to be like better, but I don't really know why.
Why is it better? Do we know? Because you are obviously an official spokeswoman for this place.
Yeah, I sound like I work for them now.
Yeah, you're really
I'm not entirely sure. So my co-host Kevin Gostola for Unauthorized Disclosure, another podcast I do, does all the tech stuff, and he knows more than I do. But apparently, like Rockfin is just kind of trying to compete with Patreon, and somehow allows you to like keep more of the subscriber money that you bring in.
Okay.
There's a few people doing it like Jimmy Dore and Lee Camp.
They're not doing Patreon anymore?
I guess not. And I don't know. I guess you can do both, but it's like a lot of work to do both. You have to make exclusive content for both. However, it's also, I think this always makes me feel better is when there's like these sort of monopolies like Patreon. I think it's good to have like a variety. I mean, it doesn't seem right to the idea of having like one sort of company that just
one game in town.
So it's good to have a variety. So I think that's always a step forward. So
a step, right? One giant step
forward,
for Rania. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was thinking of Substack also. Do you guys ever have you ever thought of Substack?
I haven't, but obviously watching all of our friends like David Sirota compete so aggressively, like to be really ranking with a lot of these folks who are coming from platforms where they had a lot of mainstream buy-in is really heartening.
Yeah,
and it's nice to see more and more of us positioning ourselves in places where we can be heard and not fired.
Right, that is a good thing. Yeah, and I mean we've talked about this before. The whole, I think both of you ladies actually get. I mean, I was thinking you, Rania, but you too, Brie, right? You really get called a.
Oh my god, the things you get called are so insane.
Yeah.
Oh my god. So insane. And in the name of like fighting racism, you get called all the nastiest things by liberals.
I know.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun. Honestly, like I'm genuinely amused by it because
we should do. You know what? We should do a segment, by the way, where we read this. We should read. We really should do hate tweets.
Yeah, like
tweets, neoliberal tweets.
The late night shows do.
Yeah, but we could just call them neoliberal tweets, maybe.
It's true. And what's so wild is that so many of the people are like not random trolls from the internet. You know,
right?
To the extent there was, the odd Bernie bro who said something off color, they were just like a random person on the internet. You have like Kamala Harris's husband taking photos with like the leader of the K Hive with his arm around him, talking about keep up the good work, K Hive.
Yeah, we gotta do a video on that or like an article on that because it's just too much, and we just can't let them get away with it. It's really ridiculous. And I know, like, okay, maybe in some ways it doesn't matter, who cares, but it does matter. All this stuff matters, and we're gonna get to that because one of the things that matters that people don't realize is why the narrative of Bernie could not have won, why that's still very relevant. I would argue it is, and we'll get into that in a second. But in general, on today's show, I mean, it'll be a typical freewheeling conversation. But I definitely want to talk about the woke washing. Did I just make that up? Is that a term?
That's a really cute word. I love it.
Good, right? Yeah. Woke washing, that I think we should have like a tally. Keep a tally. I think I said that on Useful Idiots, but I didn't come up with woke washing. So we should have a tally of all the people that they try to appoint or all the things that they do, and we should keep track every time they do that. And by that I mean they appoint bad people, name bad people, take bad positions, and they try to shroud it in like the identity of a person. So we already saw this happening with that ridiculous article that came out where Representative Meeks basically pitched a pledge not to appoint people from Wall Street as being mutually exclusive with diversity, right? So Justice Dems.
Well, everyone knows the only place that you can find a diverse collection of people who are smart is from the corporate world.
Yeah, right. There are literally there are no Black people who don't work in the corporate world. Yeah, that's just something that white privilege makes you blind to. And once you check your white privilege, you realize that every qualified Black person to be on a cabinet
works at Wall Street.
Works in Wall Street. Yeah.
Yeah, they're really telling on themselves in terms of the qualities that they think make a qualified candidate for these positions. Like fundamentally, that's what they're doing. The only person affirmative action really benefits the way it's structured currently is white women, and that's just like historical measurable metrics, and people who want a resource of Black elites to provide literal and figurative cover and color for their back. So I remember, I chuckle at all of this stuff because that was me.
Wait, you froze, Brie.
You froze, but you're saying
Brie because you are speaking power. You are speaking truth to power.
Sorry, my bad.
No, it's okay.
No,
we can hear you, but you're
very
Brie. You are. We hear you, and we want you to be seen. We see you. You're just not seeable right now.
What you're saying. You're saying you were a product of that.
I think because she's saying
that we're going with it. I think we lost her audience.
Yeah, we'll get her back. We'll get her back. But we can just so in case people miss that. I think what Brie was saying, and we're not going to speak for her. We're going to get her back into the space. We're going to hold the space for her. Oh,
sorry.
Okay. Back?
Sorry,
no, it's okay. No, we know what happened.
Not the best.
The man intervened. The CIA, the NSA. Yeah.
Right.
You were saying though. You said that you were a product of. You were saying how they're. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember being in school, and so we used to have there was a Black Women's Association and a Black Men's Association, and they used to hold the two big social events for Black kids on campus, were the celebration of Black men that the women threw, and the celebration of Black women that the men threw. And at these big formal events, all of the big banks, all of the big consulting firms would buy tables. That's how we would basically fund the events. And the gag was, you aim to try to get a seat on one of those tables because they were trying to recruit you, and you were trying to get some face time so that when on-campus recruiting happened at the end of the year or the next year or whatever, depending on what age you were, you would have a greater likelihood of getting a job at McKinsey or Bain or whatever. And there was no introspection about this. It was considered to just be a real boon and an opportunity. And these places are indoctrination mills. And I remember there was only really one professor when I was in law school, Lani Guinier, really pushed back against this idea. I was, Obama was elected my first year in law school, and we all had stars in our eyes, And when I took her class and she started talking skeptically about him and the idea of, minorities being used as cover to justify a fundamentally invalid system. I remember being so skeptical and thinking she was so cynical and kind of rolling my eyes. And by the end of the semester, I was hooked, and she was obviously right. So I don't know the atmosphere is on these campuses these days. Maybe they're more woke than we were back in the early aughts. But all of my friends, all of those people from my social circle are now the ones that are populating that world. And it's not that they're bad people, but it's really a systemic problem. And it's incumbent on us to expose it in every opportunity that we have.
Yeah.
And it's also a really, I think, attractive and appealing thing too. That's exciting for people to see that level of I was excited about Obama. I wasn't that political, I guess, like I am.
Yeah.
I wasn't that political and I guess left as I am now. But
you were not as left as you were now.
His middle name was Hussein. Yeah. I was literally my thought process at that time. I think it was my last year of college when he was running against McCain. And I was like, oh my God, maybe he won't bomb the Middle East because he shares a name that sounds super Middle Eastern. And they're all calling him a secret Muslim.
Right. So if only he were that secret socialist Muslim, right?
But that really did that actually tempered anything I wanted to criticize him about for quite some time, because I was like, his name, come on, his name.
Yeah. I mean, I bring this up a lot, and as a more, I operate in more liberal spaces then, and I was always a leftist, but my perspective has shifted a lot, and I do think certain things on the ground have changed, which makes the way we relate to politics different. But I would spend a lot of time writing about how racist people were against Obama, which they were, but it wasn't in the way that it wasn't a systemic thing. It was people telling him, you lie in the middle of his speech. Right. Remember that guy, some racist white Republican dude who said that. And there was there's a real, I don't want to say porn. I can't believe I'm saying pornography, but there really is as someone who went to Wesleyan, there's a lot of, not mileage, that sounds too exploitative, but you can really get lost in the analysis and the semiotics and, unpacking. And it's it's just not that interesting. Yes, a person said to him, you lie, in an entitled way that they wouldn't have said to a white person. But it's I remember visceral feelings of feeling not I was doing community service, but I was credentializing myself kind of I get it. I get it. And it's just, I'm not saying that that's not an important thing to be aware of, but it really is I'm just thinking about the capital that I put in, and some people still do put in, to showing how a microaggression.
Yeah.
Which
it's not the most important thing in the world. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. That should be the beginning of it. Your analysis should not stop there. It can start there. And I just, but anyway, it's interesting. But then I also feel self-conscious. I don't want to sound like a reactionary white person or class reductionist, whatever. But you know what? I'm okay with that, being called that, because I'm called that anyway.
I'm a class reductionist.
Yeah, you are a class reductionist. I think I'm a class reductionist too. The only thing that I don't want, that I'm not, is I'm not a racism dismisser. I'm not a sexism dismisser, homophobia dismisser. But yeah, we just got to figure out like what we're doing.
Well, it's about us. Well, we have a system. We have a go ahead.
No, go ahead. I interrupted.
Well, I just was gonna say, like, we have it at the end of the day, like what people need to understand, which I think we all do, is it doesn't really matter who is getting appointed in terms of their identity. It could be a white guy, it could be a trans person, it could be a black person, it could be a Muslim person. It doesn't fucking matter. What matters is the fact that all of these people are being pulled from the same institutions and organizations that all have the same ideologies.
Yeah.
Right?
So the reason I wouldn't call myself a class reductionist is that I do think that all things being equal, there is value to representation on some level, right? Like, I want to roll my eyes, but there were a bunch of little kids in 2008 who were like, oh, I never really thought I could be president, and now I could be. And there's utility in that, right? Women, we grow up seeing ourselves not represented in certain fields, and we don't even think that they're available to us, even if our parents are actively messaging you can do it. Subconsciously, these things affect you. Totally, yeah. Oh, are you good at math? You know, adults saying, oh, what's your favorite subject? Must be English, not math. You know, all of these kinds of things have an effect. I'm not right. Well, who knows how much it would be true if you hadn't been messaged to that way. So I do believe there's a value, but the representational value comes so far down below substantive value for me. That's the line. And when you're talking to people and trying to recruit people to our cause, which is always still, I'm in this campaign mindset where first and foremost, that's where I am. You know, I think about the fact that my mother is an enormously progressive person, someone who led me to Bernie, who never voted for a Democrat until
I didn't know
what's his name? Barack Obama, because she was too far left than any of these candidates, you know.
That's awesome.
But you know, for her generation, there's still a lot of just respect for Barack Obama and what he did. And I know that if I come in too hard and too hot and don't include enough caveats and don't show that I respect the achievement and, you know, throw enough bones and accolades to, okay, the family was beautiful and this meant something, and say enough of that, then I can lose an audience. You know, half my family still has like the Obama key, you know, like you can get a key made with different patterns on it. So like, even if it's only cynical, even if it's only because we want to recruit people and make them like us, I think that the left should be a little bit more sensitive to the fact that this stuff still means something to somebody else. And even if we want to adjust their priorities more than say identity doesn't matter.
Yeah. Well, no, that's why I think it's really, and I think you're absolutely right. And that's why I think it's so important that when we do talk about these things, we emphasize that, like, it's not actually about all of these individuals. Because at the end of the day, they, again, are coming from the same think tanks, the same sort of like institutional structures, whether it's people in the national security sector, they're all coming from like 3 different consulting firms that all have the same ideas and ideologies about how the world should function. And the same goes for who they're pulling from for like Treasury. They're pulling from Wall Street people. So it's like that. I think it's important to like recognize that it really isn't necessarily about the particular specific person. It's like, no matter who Joe Biden appoints to Secretary of State, it's going to have the same policy. Right. And the policy is going to be like pro-American empire, like pro-war, pro-sanctions, pro all the things that happen no matter who's in charge.
Right.
And that's like a structural issue about the way our whole system works.
100%.
I think though that, like, to Brie's point, there is something strategic about, like, I've always thought that identity stuff is important. I mean, first of all, it's important because, like, racism is bad and we should fight against it. But also, you know, I do tend to think that most of the things that we really should be prioritizing are structural things that are not identity based, not because I have any problem with that, but I just don't think that that's the way you actually will uplift most people. And of course, that's disproportionately like non-straight white people, whether that's like Social Security, Medicare for all, whatever. You know this. I mean, you always talk about this, Brie, with the college debt stuff and Black women especially, right? So like, but I do think it's you. Like, if you just say to someone, like, Rania, you and I, we don't go up to people, be like, "Hey, class reductionist here." Obviously, we're saying that. Like,
I just like to say I am one to.
No, I think so too, and I am in that. Like, if I have to reduce, I mean, yeah, and it's whatever. It's like there is an important. We all have different roles to play, also, and like I do think, because, you know, Adolph Reed really has a problem with the disparity discourse, which I think is totally, like, I agree with him. Like, the goal is not to have a more representative, exploitative system. where they're, whites are as represented among the poor as Black people are, percentage wise, right? But I do get how, and I'm always saying, these things disproportionately harm, like, not having Medicare for all disproportionately harms people of color. And that is important, but it's not just important morally, but it's like, I think, an important organizing tool. It's like a gateway drug. Yes. It's like a gateway argument. And then, because from there, because honestly, like, it isn't my goal that we just have a more representative group of people who are screwed over. Like, I want everyone to have a certain base, right? But I think that maybe it's a good way to, once you get people to think of it as like, oh, this thing, because there's so much discourse about how race stuff and gender stuff on the one hand and economic stuff are mutually exclusive or like not connected. So I think that because so many people start there, I do think it can be useful to say, well, look at how these things, which people pretend have nothing to do with racism, look how intrinsically related they are to that. And then from there, you can be like, now that you're on board with that, let's actually fight beyond just making it more representative. Like, let's try to get rid of poverty.
Yeah, Adolph Reed's critique of disparity politics, I think, is spot on. But we also live in a world where we have been indoctrinated for generations to only perceive things through that lens. So, there were people on the far left who were frustrated with me during the campaign because I would tweet so much about the racial disparity, student loan debt, disproportionate, it affects black women and all this stuff.
People actually like, commented negatively on that from the left.
The far left.
Yeah.
Well, look, I don't mean to disparage. I'm trying not to say her name because I don't want to like bring unnecessary attention to her. But it wasn't a lot of people. But there was a small group of folks who felt like I was validating.
Is this a person on Twitter who's super divisive?
I think I know who you're talking about.
Yes, but I listen to her. I listen to her podcast periodically. I want to know what everyone's thinking, right? I listen to Pod Save, I listen to everything, and I don't mean to disparage any part of a coalition that might be with us. Right. So, like, I'm really not trying to even hate on her right now. But the reality is that she was emblematic of a section of the left that, felt like I was buying into those tropes, or that I somehow didn't understand the critique because I was using that language. And I'm like, we're trying to win a war here. And if I'm coming to human beings, not ideas, there are human beings who I'm trying to connect to who only know how to speak using this lingo. Right. Yeah. And it's true. And if you feel like, no one ever says this about like farmers, right? You would never say, if Bernie gets on a stage in Iowa and talks about agricultural subsidies or something, no one's like, oh, that's identity politics,
Right.
If I go to a coastal town and talk about erosion, no one's like, oh, how dare you pander to my identity as a coastal, Gulf worker, a fisherman or whatever. And they shouldn't. Mechanics, white working class, all of these people have aggregates of interests that they can use as collectively to get power. And racial groups are no different, especially since we live in a country that has specifically marginalized people on the basis of race. You can't do that for hundreds of years and then turn around and say, oh, let's never talk about that again, right? That political identity was encoded on us, forced upon us. You're from a million different tribes and peoples and Africas and languages and religions, and you forced us to be this thing. We don't have an alternative. I don't know where my ancestors are from, So no, don't get mad at us for having this identity that's been put on us. Instead, be happy that there is a political hook for you to use. And let's be honest and clear about it and try to expand people's sense of identity so that we can grow bigger and bigger coalitions. But don't alienate people by acting as though the identity that is the only thing that they really have politically to grasp onto doesn't matter.
Especially when you're talking to a Democratic electorate, like in a Democratic primary.
Yeah. It's so funny, Brie, to see you. You're usually, it's like hilarious. You're usually at the other end of these discussions. Not like I feel like, I agree with everything you're saying, but it's so funny because you're like speaking to the importance of this. But of course it's true. And there is this false dichotomy. And I guess the thing is that, like, of course, there is also the thing of microaggressions. Like, I'll be in a room talking to people and I notice that the man doesn't, I don't mean the man, a guy won't doesn't make eye contact with me as much as he does with the other people. And okay, some people are like uncomfortable around, I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about people being nervous around women. I'm talking about just snobbish, not taking women as seriously intellectually. So that annoys me. I think, and I'm not comparing that to slavery or Jim Crow, obviously. I'm just saying that I'm not unaware of even the stuff that I deal with, which is very little. But that, I guess the issue is I think you're totally right. We have to go cover all the bases and make all the arguments, and different people have different roles, and different people, the same person can have different roles too. Like when you're talking to one group of people, Brie, you probably pivot in one direction versus another one. I do the same thing. Like if I'm talking about Israel, you know, like I'll say to people, it's not in Israel's best interest to do ABC.
Depending on who you're talking to.
Yeah. That's not really, I mean,
you gotta speak to where people. You gotta speak to where people are at.
Yeah.
I do think that.
The solutions, I would just say, is I think the solutions ultimately are things that are universal, but that's not mutually exclusive with making the argument based on that takes identity into account.
Right.
But then I guess the issue now is like, okay, we're not in the primary anymore. Joe Biden won. He's now going to be appointing all these people, and they really are trying to cover themselves by saying the most diverse cabinet. But then when you look at the people he's appointing, it's like horrifying what they support and what they have supported. You've got this woman. I want to make sure I get her name right.
Michelle Flournoy.
Well, before I even get to her, even for like I was going to start with Cecilia Munoz.
Munoz. Yeah.
I want to make sure I say that right. And like this woman's like on video defending the separation, or defending like detaining children under the Obama administration. Like it's horrifying. I'm not gonna. How do you want me to be excited?
Let me look for that clip. Actually,
it's good. We just talked about this, I think, on the last episode of Bad Faith podcast. It's an outrageous clip, particularly since this entire election, the left has been told that somehow we don't care enough, we're not fighting hard enough to beat Trump. We must not care about kids in cages. And the left has been pushing back, saying the origin story of those cages, home slice, is long before Donald Trump. And if you really cared, then you would be willing to criticize Obama. And now we have a literal architect, a literal defender of that program, explicitly defending it, being, appointed by Joe Biden.
A 60 Minutes interview or something. It's like a interview on CBS or something.
I'm looking it up.
I think warrant policy.
I'm looking for. I think it was on Democracy Now. But I'm gonna text someone to see if they.
I think it's a Democracy Now clip.
While you're looking for it, like
someone already sent it to me.
Oh
no, they didn't. Sorry, that was someone else who sent me something. What were you saying?
Well, I was just gonna say, I mean, you look at the other collection of people that we're supposed to get excited about, like the likely choice for Secretary of State will be Susan Rice, who is somebody who, I mean, she was vital to convincing Obama to intervene in Libya, which not only destroyed a formerly stable and one of the most prosperous countries in North Africa, but actually brought back slavery.
Right.
Which we don't talk about ever. No one talks about. And it's now a hellhole that's run by a bunch of like fighting militias, and refugees are constantly fleeing from and still drowning the sea to get out of. And then, on top of that, I mean, Susan Rice was on CNN over the summer during the largest protests that I can remember ever in my lifetime, the George Floyd protests, saying that Russia was possibly funding them. Like that's so outrageous.
Serious?
Oh, yeah. Brie, you gotta see that. Hold on.
Oh my God.
That's another really good
it's completely outrageous. Like she was like with Wolf Blitzer, like having a full-on conversation about, the Kremlin's trying to take advantage and divide, and they're probably funding some part of this. She's also somebody who supported, she goes around bragging at her little lectures at think tanks that she was one of her big arguments for Obama bombing Syria was that he should just do it because he's never going to get congressional approval. She was saying he should bomb.
Was that Rice or Flournoy?
That was Rice.
It was Rice. Oh, yeah. They both. I think she did that too, which is awesome.
I mean, Michelle Flournoy has the same politics. I mean, they come out of the same circles. They have the same politics. There's these very hawkish women. Michelle Flournoy comes from this group. She founded this group with Tony Blinken, another high-level advisor to Biden, who's been in the foreign policy advisory role since the Clinton years. They founded this group called West Exec Advisors, which is basically just a lobbying front of consultancy that just connects, uses their government connections and their corporate connections, to keep this revolving door going. And Michelle Flournoy was also at Boston Consulting Group, where she helped negotiate like $32 million in military contracts for various weapons companies. She also sits on the board of Booz Allen Hamilton, one of the largest weapons companies in the country. Like, I can't get excited about that. I'm a woman and I don't care. Like, I don't care. This is somebody who's extremely hawkish, who's literally said, like, in a professional capacity, that the U.S. needs to enhance its military capabilities to sink all of China's submarines and Navy ships in a 72-hour period so that they know that they can't mess with America. Like, this is the mentality we're talking about. And I'm not saying this is special to Michelle Flournoy or special to Susan Rice. You'll get this from whoever Biden appoints, but they're trying to use the fact that these are women, and in the case of Susan Rice, a woman of color, to try and like suggest there's some sort of progressive, like progressivism, like this illusion of progress that doesn't actually exist. That's going to be in charge of branches of government.
Do you guys remember that time Roseanne Barr?
Susan Rice. Oh yeah.
Sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry. I'm a little off topic. Not totally off topic.
No. I want to keep Roseanne Barr, but I did find that the Susan Rice video, by the way,
existed.
Yeah.
Roseanne Barr.
Do you remember the time Roseanne Barr said something kind of racist about she said that Susan, I think it was Susan Rice, looked like a monkey, and never mind. It was Valerie Jarrett. It was Valerie Jarrett.
Oh, here's the Susan Rice clip. I think it might have been Michelle Obama.
No, it was Valerie Jarrett, and then her defense was, I didn't know that she was Black.
Oh yeah, right. I think I remember that. Yeah,
sorry, that was Valerie Jarrett. My bad. It wasn't Susan Rice. Please continue being a serious news person, Katie.
Okay. Oh yes, very serious. With my Sauvignon Blanc. Okay, here we go. Ready? Tell me if you.
Who have come to try to hijack those
so this is
protests and turn them into something very different. And they are probably also, I would bet, based on my experience, I'm not reading the intelligence today or these days, but based on my experience, this is right out of the Russian playbook as well. But we can't allow the extremists, the foreign actors, to distract from the real problems we have in this country that are long-standing, centuries old, and need to be addressed responsibly by new leadership.
You're absolutely right on the foreign interference, because we know for decades the Russians, when it was the Soviet Union, the communists, they've often tried to embarrass the United States by promoting the racial divide in our country. But what you're suggesting, Ambassador, is that they're still trying to do that. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, we see it all the time. We've seen it for years and frankly every day on social media, where they take any divisive, painful issue, whether it's immigration, whether it's gay rights, whether it's gun violence, and always racism, and they play on both sides. Their aim is not simply to embarrass the United States, Wolf. Their aim is to divide us, to cause us to come into combat with each other, to disintegrate from within. And I would not be surprised to learn that they have fomented some of these extremists on both sides using social media. I wouldn't be surprised to learn that they're funding it in some way, shape, or form. And that's something that we need to take seriously, but we cannot allow it to distract us from the real problem that is an American problem that we alone can address. And we need leadership desperately, Wolf, that doesn't demonize peaceful protesters, frankly, from Colin Kaepernick to those who have tried peacefully to protest in recent days. We need leadership that listens, that understands.
Okay, what's interesting about that, by the way, is that Colin Kaepernick, she should have talked about this with Kamala Harris, because Kamala Harris suggested that Colin Kaepernick was also either, I guess, I don't know if he was working with the Russians, probably not. He was duped by the Russians
He was a useful idiot. He was a useful idiot,
right? Yeah.
Wait, Kamala Harris said that?
Yeah. I know, this is such a funny show. It's like, wait, what? I mean, but is there video of that, or did she just say that?
She was like on some podcast. She was on some like video podcast. I think a really well-known one hosted. I don't remember which one it was, but she was like on
Ruth Bader Ginsburg's,
Oh no, yeah.
No, this was like a different. By the way, just FYI, so I actually just saw that Biden is actually likely to appoint Tony Blinken, not Susan Rice.
Oh my God! Wait, you guys, hold on. We have to have a moment of silence. We have to have a moment. Let's have a drink. Let's have a
cheers to Tony Blinken.
No, we have to have a moment of silence for Susan Rice.
Right, keeping a Black woman down.
Yeah. So who's this guy? Tell us about Tony. Tony Blinken.
Tony Blinken helped found West Exec Advisors with Michelle Flournoy. He's been in like a foreign policy. I'm surprised he's going to be appointed.
But now I am mad, by the way, that if it's going to be a white guy, I'm mad. Like, why can't you have it? If it's going to be a powerful bad person.
I said before, it's the same ideology. It doesn't matter.
I know. And obviously, I mean, I actually find it more dangerous when there's like this cynical use because it is washing. Yeah. But also at the same time, I am like, come on, like representation is important. So.
I think honestly, you know what's fucked? I think the reason that Tony Blinken's going to be appointed and not Susan Rice, if that is what will actually happen, which is all the media outlets are reporting now, is because the Republicans in the Senate have said that they will not allow Susan Rice to be confirmed because they're still obsessed with Libya in the wrong way.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. The whole Benghazi thing.
You're the right country, the right state Senate Secretary of State. You're so close. It's Clinton, so it's Libya. It's just not that. Yeah.
Yeah. But Tony Blinken is he helped co-found this this consultancy firm with Michelle Flournoy. And he has deep connections to like leaders around the world. He helped advise Bill Clinton and then later Obama. And he's like been a revolving door kind of guy as well. Very hawkish, though the one thing he isn't hawkish on, and this is interesting, is he wants to go back to the Iran deal because he helped negotiate it during Obama's term.
Okay.
So actually, when Joe Biden was running, AIPAC was very upset about Tony Blinken's involvement.
Oh, that's good. That's a
because
good sign.
AIPAC has turned into like a pro-Netanyahu Likud kind of like outfit. And anybody who wants to go back to the Iran deal, no matter how pro-Israel they are, is like not pro-Israel enough. So
interesting. Wow.
So,
maybe because they saw maybe they heard our talk right now and they're like, we're not going to be able to get away with it.
Switch it to Tony
They're
Blinken.
on to us. Yeah.
What I will say is if you have Tony Blinken as Secretary of State and then Michelle Flournoy, who's the top pick to head the Pentagon, then they're just going to basically bring their firm into the government.
Yeah.
And it's just more revolving door stuff. Like once they're done being in government, they'll go back to their firm and they'll like use all their connections to make some more money for all the industries that they work for.
It only matters if Trump's doing it. You know, the most cynical part of my brain says the reason that the Democrats never really pushed the emoluments clause stuff is that they didn't want their own kids to get in trouble.
Yeah, of course. That has to be why, right?
Set the precedent.
They all do it. Yeah, they all do it. I think Trump just like was in your face about it with giving his kids like direct jobs in the White House. But they all do it. That was
always the most. I mean, Brie, you're the person who went to law school, and not only that, you were a practicing lawyer. Like you know this better than we do. But that always seemed like the most straightforward legal case against him.
Yeah, I thought when you said you went to law school, I thought you were going to say you went to law school with Kamala Harris's niece who makes a living selling sweaters.
Oh my God, you did?
I did.
Wait, no, but not the Harris.
The one who works for Uber.
The Uber niece.
Yeah.
She's like the head of your diversity.
Sweaters? She sells sweaters.
She sells. Well, she's always sold kind of like Black Power. You know those Phenomenal Women's T-shirts that every celebrity. She makes those. And she now has pivoted into all these Kamala themed, she did ambitious ones about how people were like myself were rightly criticizing Kamala Harris for putting her own personal ambitions over the interests of the Black and brown people in her state.
Who she was locking up, you mean?
Correct.
And things like truancy? Yeah.
Right. And they flipped the criticizing her ambition into like a feminist slogan to their teachers from that. I don't know that she made This Little Girl Is Me t-shirts, but I think they're going to see a lot of t-shirts out of Kamala World, children's books. I'm a grifter. Hey, everyone, get your hustle. I'm a grifter apparently for having an independent podcast.
You both
are
grifters.
How dare you? How dare you make money for podcasts?
We can make grifter swag, actually, totally seriously. Be like, pay me, I'm a grifter. I'm going to make shirts. I'm going to make those
just say grifter. Yeah, like I'll buy a grifter shirt. Yeah, I'll buy one.
Look, I have no issue with it. I have no personal beef with anybody, but it's just the inconsistency, the hypocrisy, to be a liberal for a second. The hypocrisy here is just it's pretty galling.
That's the last thing that goes. I still look at the hypocrisy stuff and everyone's like, no one gives a shit. Like, of course. Yeah.
There's a new one. You guys, if I could just have a little bit of a moment, there's a new one you guys are going to love. It's a Christmas sweater. And it says, deck the halls with smart, strong women. Kamala la 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 la.
I can't. No.
Oh my God! Wait, I just thought of a really good one, you guys. Oh Kamala, come light the menorah. It's Hanukkah, come light the menorah. Let's
Oh
give
my
it to we'll all
God.
dance. Wait, what are the words? We got to do this on the spot. Kamala,
That
come light
actually,
the
like, hurt
menorah.
me.
Oh no, where did I start?
I
I'm
know.
so sorry. I
Traumatized.
shouldn't
I
have
feel
started this.
traumatized.
What are the lyrics? Hanukkah, come light the menorah. Let's have a. Hold on. Light
You
the
want to
menorah.
light? It sounds like you want
You
to
know,
light
it's
Kamala
fine.
on
It's like,
fire.
Oh my
I
God, no.
get. I'm really torn on this because I get, obviously, if my aunt were president, or vice president, I'd be very excited about it as well. But
you probably
lack
wouldn't
of
be shilling for Prop 22.
Yeah,
That
that's
is
where I'm like,
true.
no. Yeah, you said that girl sucks for that reason.
That
I don't
girl
care who
sucks,
she
yeah.
is. Like,
What's her name? Mina?
Yeah,
Mina
There's
something.
Maya's the sister, and then there's
She's
Mina.
like she's the head of Uber's like diversity.
Yeah, Tony
department or
and Tony
something.
West. Is that his name? Tony West?
Is that her
That's
brother-in-law?
her
Yeah,
brother-in-law.
that's her stepfather.
Yeah.
Who's like in
Her
charge of
stepfather.
that prop.
Oh yeah, Kamala's
Although
brother-in-law,
she
yeah.
did,
It's Kamala's brother-in-law, yeah.
to be fair to Kamala Harris, which I'm not usually, but to be fair to her, when she in California, she was they actually got into like they were on opposite sides of something a couple years ago. With Uber wanting to strip his workers of some rights, and she actually was on the opposite of that, which I was surprised to see.
Good.
Well, they came out on the good side of she and Joe Biden opposed Prop 22, at least in word, if not in deed. I mean, she could have probably tried to talk her brother-in-law.
She could have done more,
right?
She could have. Well, she also could have vocally spoke out.
She could have been outspoken about it. During the campaign, they could have been outspoken about it. Any number of Democrats could have been outspoken about it. So, I mean,
their ads are gross. Did you see their ads? They are like all people of color.
Yeah.
They're all like
they
all
got
of their
the California NAACP, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes,
they got them on board.
Yes, they paid them a lot of money, and they wrote an op-ed about it. Yeah, someone from the California NAACP wrote an op-ed about it. Yes, after being given a lot of money. What's so annoying is these things should be not that hard to find. I remember Googling them, and it was like I finally got there, but we need to make talking points, guys. That's what we should do.
Well, nobody's doing reporting.
Let's have a talking points of the week.
Yeah, I mean,
we should do this. Yeah,
the only people doing any reporting on these issues are independent outlets. Like the New York Times isn't writing about it.
No, we know that. Yeah, and if you do write about it, you get into a lot of trouble. And in fact,
they write about it after the fact. Write about it after the fact.
But it's like David Sirota is like the only person doing investigative reporting on all the corruption issues, all the conflict of interest issues, and everybody else is spending their time. Did you see that New York Times article about how? Oh, well, we're all talking about. So we opened up talking about the I don't know, this woman. She doesn't even seem to be like a real journalist, who wrote this like 2-paragraph article about how it's going to hurt the diversity of Joe Biden's administration if he can't pick people from these corporations.
Oh, well, there's that. I was actually referring to an older piece where let me look for that. But yeah, I heard. Okay. So there's so much stuff. Let's. What were we talking about? Sorry, I was gonna. I got the lyrics. Okay, I got the lyrics. Ready? Hanukkah, oh Hanukkah, come light the menorah. Let's have a party. We'll all dance the horror. Gather around the table. We'll give you a treat. Dreidels to play with and latkes to eat. And while we are playing, the candles are burning low. One for each night they shed a sweet light to remind us of days long ago. One for each night they shed a sweet light to remind us of days long ago. What's funny is I bet you a Kamala fan will either hear about this or will have thought about this on their own because she's married to a Jewish guy. And oh Kamala is a good song, but I would say oh Kamala, come light. How could I cover it? Come light the menorah. Kamala, oh Kamala, don't be a schnorrer. That's what we're gonna do. A schnorrer is someone who, it's when you're cheap. So we should urge them to pass a stimulus, right? We should urge them to whatever we want them to do. We'll say Kamala, oh Kamala, come light the menorah. Let's have a party. Don't be a schnorrer.
Are you guys just like a little surprised? Maybe I'm very naive still, but are you just like a little surprised by how little they're willing to move on even student loan debt?
Yeah, Brie.
It's outrageous.
Speak on it, Brie, and tell us why it's important and what they're doing.
So obviously not having the Senate, you're down to a limited universe of things you can actually do. The Republicans talk nonstop about stimulus checks and trickle-down economics and all of this bull crap 99 days out of the year. Democrats have an opportunity this one time where they have a good excuse for not doing other kinds of social programs, right? Like there's this argument, oh, why don't you help poorer people first? Totally, I'd love to help poorer people first, but I can't because Republicans won't let me do it. So this is what I can do with executive order. It's an enormous injection into the economy. It will help landlords, tenants, everybody. Bernie Sanders' stat said that it would be the average, even if you don't have student loans, would be equivalent of like a $3,000 boost to your like personal income over the course of 5 years or something like that. You check my Twitter for the specific stats, and on and on and on, right? And Democrats, even though they have every argument in the world on their side, are backing away from it. So Chuck Schumer, to his credit, with Elizabeth Warren to her credit, come out with $50,000. Now, why they're starting at 50 and not everything blows my mind. It's beyond me.
But that's still better than what Biden's offering, right?
Oh yeah,
like the 50,000.
So then Biden comes through with a plan that could only be more convoluted if Kamala Harris wrote it, right? Because in Kamala Harris's plan, we have to jump on one foot, hula hooping, and open a small minority-owned business in a bad neighborhood that runs for 3 years and all this crap. Only half of that is a joke. The other half is legitimately what her plan was.
Yeah, it's almost accurate. So, it's like almost accurate.
Biden's plan. First of all, he's intentionally vague about it. Right.
We never know if it's because he can't remember or if he's being sketchy. Yeah. Unclear.
Right. So it's what we do know is that it doesn't cover anybody who makes over $125,000 a year, which is one of these mean tested things, which really screwed with a lot of people for the stimulus check, right? Because people, like, not to make it about myself, but people like myself made over that, but then lost their jobs and didn't benefit from any of that. And all kinds of people are still getting laid off. It's still an issue. It doesn't cover grad school debt. It doesn't cover private. Nope. It doesn't cover private school debt. So the people who are really in these usurious educational institutions, like all of these for-profit colleges, too bad you got hoodwinked by the University of, Southern Arizona or whatever. You're just screwed. Those kinds of for-profit colleges are not even on that. So it's supposed to be targeting people, but it's leaving behind a lot of the people it's supposed to be targeting. And then all of these freaking Democrats, all of these liberals, like normal people, are arguing against broad cancellation for what? I don't even hear the Republican arguments. I'm sure they're out there, but I can't even get through all of these people who are supposed to be on our same
like they
team.
They are the Republicans in this situation.
Right.
It's like Republicans don't even have to make an argument because they're offering to cancel like nothing. $10,000 student debt for someone who has like $80,000 in debt.
So I wish.
Who's like paying interest and like, I mean, my student debt isn't that high, but I still have student debt and I went to a public college.
Right.
And I'm like in my 30s. And I mean, I just can't understand. Like, it's like, I think of all the things that I can't do because I have this debt hanging over my head.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, you're losing as a country, like even from like an America, is like exceptional perspective. It doesn't actually make sense to me, like why you want to like eat your young.
Right.
Like you actually want to devour your youth.
Start bargaining here.
Yes.
Just say you're going to cancel it all. Or here's the other thing. If you're going to entertain this, it's a giveaway to the rich argument. Let me like lay a little factual knowledge on you.
Yeah.
I remember the first year I was paying back my student debt. I took out the full amount for law school because who else was going to pay for it? And the entire world said, Briahna, go to the best school you can, get the best education you can. You can become a lawyer and make lots of money and give back to your community and do all these things. Black people don't work hard, but you can muscle through and you can be the talented 10th. And all this crap was the stuff that was fed to me. So I took out the full $160,000 to go to law school.
Damn.
The first year I was obliged to pay it back. I was lucky enough to graduate and get a job at a firm where I could afford my loan payments. They were $2,300 a month. And the first year I got my little tax form telling me how much I had paid principal versus interest. I had paid about $18,000 in interest and about $5,000 to the principal. When I saw that, I fell to my knees and started sobbing in my studio apartment.
Feeling you get when you see how much you're actually not paying on the principal because of interest, it's like someone's kicking you on your inside. And it's infuriating. So
excuse me, if $10,000 wouldn't even cover barely half of my first year's interest payment.
It's crazy.
And there are a ton of, like, obviously I'm a less sympathetic case. Obviously I have always had relative means, but the idea of me ever being able to be a journalist and like leave the firm, it was miserable. I hated it. And I was hurting people. And I felt like I couldn't leave. Because who else was going to pay a 27-year-old enough money?
You know what it's kind of like? It's kind of like microloans. Yeah. Like with the students. Like, do you remember those microloans kept saying like people out of poverty?
Yeah, right.
They did it to like us. It turned around and did it to us.
Someone in the chat is saying this, and they're making a good point. They don't want us to be free. They don't want us to have social mobility. It's the same way that mortgages used to keep us fixed and locked into the system and afraid to rebel and challenge authority. Now all of us are walking around with these student loan anvils around our neck. And let's not forget that Joe Biden, the senator from MBNA or whatever they used to call him from Delaware with all this financial interest, is the one who is principally behind negotiating to make sure that our debt is non-dischargeable through bankruptcy. And that's part of what fueled the escalation in college prices, because colleges knew that no matter what, they were going to be able to get someone, i.e. the government, to pay for this debt under any circumstances. So they can keep raising tuition. This is all his fault. And now this man he has the temerity to scoff at rectifying the problem that he caused.
Remember that there's that video of him talking at some event where he's like, do you know the
millennials, the no empathy one? Yeah, I got it.
I have no sympathy. He's like, I have no sympathy.
No empathy.
I don't feel bad for
no
you
empathy.
guys.
Give me a break.
Empathy.
Give me a break. Yeah, I'll find that.
The last video I did before quarantine go ahead.
No. I was just gonna say about so my parents are immigrants. They came to the US in like the 70s because there was like a civil war breaking out in the country that I'm from. And they neither of them had a college education. Neither of them could, they were like both working for minimum wage. They were able to, throughout the 70s and 80s, like afford to buy a house, afford to have 4 children who they were able to like feed and clothe. I mean, it wasn't easy. They were able to do it. And it's just like looking at what they were able to
Drew's privilege, Rania. Drew's privilege.
Looking at what they were able to do then from their Drew's privilege, compared to like what I have been able to do as a college educated person and the sort of debt I've been like sucked into and like how my options are so much more limited. Like, I don't understand. Like, I go back to like, I don't understand Democrats and liberals who like don't want the country to be better. Like, even from their perspective, I'm like, do you not get that? Like, do you not get that? Like, literally my parents who didn't have college educations were like able to financially be like more successful in the ways that we measure success. Like, they were able to purchase a home and pay a mortgage in a way that I can't do like in 2020 because you literally like suffocated me with debt for going to school. And like, I just don't understand. And then the other thing too is like, okay, say they cancel all the student debt, which would be fucking awesome. They should cancel all of it. But once they do that, like, what happens to the kids going to college next year?
Yeah, well,
like, they end up taking, right? Like, they're not even talking about the actual like problem at the center of this, which is
it's like charity. It's almost like it's charity. That's a similar thing to charity as opposed
temporary,
to
like temporary relief for people who are in debt now.
Undoing something. Yeah,
that was part of why Bernie was like coupling his, obviously, with making public colleges tuition free in trade schools and a bunch of other kinds of 2-year schools and et cetera, tuition free. So at least, because what the unspoken thing that is true is that people like yourself, Rania, like have a lot of debt from public schools as well. Like people, my brother went to SUNY Stony Brook. Like my ex went to University of Michigan. Like there are people who have tons of debt, like from these institutions, because room and board and all of this are expensive regardless. And to you, depending on the kind of degree that you get coming out of these schools and the kind of like, boost to your earning capacity, you feel equally kind of like pigeonholed, whether or not you're coming from one institution or, someplace like Harvard. The one other point I want to make about this is that everyone is all about giving giveaways to the middle class until it comes to something like student debt. So the whole Democratic agenda is like to pretend poor people don't exist because they don't vote and like give you tax rebates on how many kids you have and mortgage write-offs and all of this crap, right? The day that I realized, and I'm sorry if you've seen me rant about this on Twitter, but like this will be like, put it on my tombstone because this is all I care about in life at this point. When I discovered, I was trying to figure out how much of my interest payment that first year I could write off on my taxes. What I discovered was not only that I could write $0 off because I earned more than $60,000 a year. There's a means tested cutoff, but that even if I did make less than $60,000 a year, I would only be able to write off $2,000 of that interest, deduct $2,000 from my taxes. Now, compared to if I had purchased a $1 million home. If I had purchased a $1 million home, I would have been able to write off the totality of the interest payments on that $1 million home.
That's a really good comparison. Oh my God, that's so infuriating.
It's outrageous. On top of which, the homeowner is operating at like a 2 or 3% interest rate. What is my interest rate, you ask me? Well, it is 8%.
Yeah. There are some crazy ass loan, like oh my God, college. It's such a fucking headache. It's such a headache. But to speak to like
well, should we watch do you want to watch? I feel like we tease people.
The millennial thing.
Yeah,
oh my God,
we gotta watch that.
Joe Biden.
Okay, let's see. This is a good one. Really good. Okay. Can you guys see here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Public service seems now not to be held in very high esteem.
No, it's not. And no, but it's not just because, I'll be very blunt, it's not just because of our president. It's a whole lot of things. I only had 2 political heroes my whole life. And this is not new. I've been said this since 1972. Dr. King and Robert Kennedy. And up to that point, there was a war raging. There was a bitter fight over even whether we should talk about the environment. Women were still viewed as second-class citizens and not prepared to have significant jobs, thought that. And we were told the people didn't talk to one another over the war. And we were told, drop out, go out to Haight-Ashbury, get engaged. Shortly after I graduated in 68, 17 kids shot dead. And so the younger generation now, how tough things are. Give me a break. No. I have no empathy for it. Give me a break. Because here's the deal, guys.
What? Tell us the deal,
We decided
Joe.
we were going to, and we did.
Oh, you did? What'd you do?
We did.
What did you
finished
do?
the civil rights movement to the first stage.
How? What was your role?
Came to be.
What was your role?
He went to an HBCU in Delaware. Remember when he lied about that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, I honestly know because I have to have like a listicle of the lies because I can't keep track of them. But yeah, my favorite Biden lie, though, is that he was arrested visiting
Nelson Mandela.
Right.
Yeah.
He wasn't. To be fair, I'm going to grant him a lot. He had been to South Africa. He stepped into that country. He had been to that country.
To be fair, he also had a good take on South Africa. Like he was shockingly anti-apartheid.
Yeah, but like most Democrats were anti-apartheid, right? That was like Reagan and Cheney they
even
didn't.
the Queen of England, apparently. I learned from watching The Crown.
Oh God, Matt and I reviewed that, having not watched it. That's our new feature.
Having not watched it, that's cute.
Yeah, I watched a couple episodes of The Crown early on. Once the father died, who's a great actor, I didn't care about anyone on the show.
Well, you just gave
away.
It's like the first episode. It's like the king. Sorry, I mean it's not like Jim Rando's father, right? The king. I'm like once the main character's dad died, the King of England. Well, the other thing is like, what did you do for the civil rights movement besides like negotiate a truce with Corn Pop over after you called him Esther Williams? Apparently, did you know that part? He like called him Esther Williams.
I don't remember that part. I just remember that clip was outrageous and got 0 media play, like none. I will give Biden credit because for what ended up being in one of my favorite moments of the debate, the Kamala v. Joe Biden moments, where it's just like that Spider-Man meme where they're both pointing at each other. It's like they're all trash. When Kamala came at him for his record on busing, and then he says back to her, "At least I was a public defender. You're a prosecutor."
Wow. Yes. That's good. Yeah. Well, Brie, but you know why? It was a debate. It was a debate. That's my impersonation, Ron, in case you didn't see it, of her talking to Colbert when Colbert is like, I saw you fighting with Biden during the debate and now you're running together. And she's like, it was a debate.
I've seen people making fun of how she, like, remember that clip of her calling Joe and being like, Joe, you're going to be president.
Oh, yeah, you're going to be president. We did it, Joe. She's so like, I almost like it. Like, she's so fake that I almost like it. Like, I almost find it's like almost badass.
I almost like, as far as charm goes, she has like none. Like, I don't.
Yeah, I mean, I wanna at least like her on an individual level. It's like, it's not like I don't spend my life thinking about her like wanting to ruin her. The fact that she flip-flops all over the place is deeply frustrating, but also is an opportunity for us to push her on the commitments that she's made in the past. Like, I appreciate that at least she signed on to the Medicare for All bill. Now, it doesn't help me very much right now, but it's something that we can use as leverage going forward. So I don't think she is the worst. My problem is that she's just so cringe because she just won't be herself. And when she's herself, she can be very delightful.
I totally agree. Yeah.
The last clip that I saw that she made before she dropped out was a cooking video of her and Mindy Kaling.
Yeah, I heard that about that.
I brought this up before. She was so charming. They were like in Mindy Kaling's, I think they were in her kitchen. And Mindy Kaling was like, oh, my dad keeps his spices in the same containers. And they were having this great cultural crossover moment. Yeah, it was genuinely cute. And they seemed genuinely excited about each other. And I think that Kamala Harris genuinely loves to cook, is good at it, and gets a lot of joy out of it. And I like to see people doing what they love and what they're good at. Being a politician isn't one of those things for Kamala Harris, but
she's very inauthentic. As a politician, she's very inauthentic when she talks. Like, even when she gave her big speech when they accepted their, I was like, because I can understand the significance of your first Black, or I guess half Black, half Indian vice president, a woman, right? It's like a big deal. And I still was kind of like, man, I'm not feeling anything she's saying.
I had Trevor Beaulieu on after that night because I needed to vent and process their acceptance speech. And I was saying to him, I cried at both Obama acceptance speeches. Includes after I really knew how much he sucked. And this, I was ready to be moved. I wasn't moved at all. I thought they were so Obama's skill is that he gives a fairly substance-free speech, but
he's a great speaker. He's a great orator.
He's a great orator, and he really pulls. It's a perfect combo of emotional and it's not too cerebral,
and it's so likable. He's so likable.
But this was just there was nothing. I was waiting. I was prepared to be moved, especially by the Kamala thing, because and no, I wasn't. Also, this is totally superficial, and no men watching this can ever say this, but that was a terrible neckline. Terrible neckline. Am I right?
I think she dresses. If we're gonna get misogyny, I think she dresses better than Hillary Clinton.
No, she, of course. Well, not
anyone can dress better than Hillary Clinton.
If I can compliment Hillary Clinton, I think that she does the best. I think she works with what she's got, and I think she maximizes the materials at her disposal.
I like that green thing she wore at Benghazi. The Benghazi outfit was great.
I like her little Mao collar.
Yeah, she looks good in Peter. Is that
it was a cloak. She was constantly wearing a cloak. It looked like she was always wearing a cloak.
The cloak thing isn't good.
I wasn't. What else is she gonna wear? A sweater set?
She has amazing stylist. She has she's rich. I feel like there's no excuse. When you're rich, there's no excuse to dress poorly.
I'm just gonna say I think Kamala usually dresses well. I thought that of all not anyone, not her husband, no one was that neckline doesn't work.
That's the thing. When you're wearing a blazer like that and you're already tend toward kind of a boxy profile. I say this as a broad-shouldered person who loves to wear a lot of blazers. Yeah. Either you pull it up
all the way, or you have
a included neck, turtleneck, something, or you drop it down.
Exactly.
Would be my
But none of this, not a crew neck with a bow.
The bow.
Is that what I didn't even notice her neckline. I was more just
a satin bow was more reflective, so it even drew more attention to it. I like the all white instinct because of feminism and all the things.
Yeah.
And she has so many people she's so affluent.
I know.
Her niece is very stylish.
There's
no excuse.
You're saying, an open neck. I don't think she could have done a high. Yeah, I think open was the only option, honestly. And she wasn't
terrible. It wasn't the worst. But I was.
Guys, cut this out. Don't watch this. If you're a man or you're not a feminist, just skip this part.
Are we are we the worst? We're talking about what women were wearing.
A little bit.
Whatever. We've been over an hour on substance. We get to dabble in this, and also Jill Biden's dress was terrible.
I don't
remember what she was wearing. All I know is it seemed like she came out to collect Joe.
Yeah. If we want to talk about men, I'm happy to talk about men.
They Joe Biden that night. They pumped him. They had to it seemed like they pumped him full of something. He came out and he tried really hard not to stumble on his words.
He did. I don't think he messed up that much at all. For him, he was really good. Maya Randolph, by the way, is it Rudolph or Randolph? I never remember.
I think it's Rudolph.
Maya Rudolph?
Yeah, she does a good Kamala.
I love Maya Rudolph.
Kamala.
I wish. So we had a late night personality, a comedian, Roy Wood Jr. on Hear the Burn, LOL. Bad Faith podcast.
Yeah.
And we were talking to him about how, like, where's comedy going to go next? Because our concern, obviously, on the left, our perception is that the big divide in American politics, the tension point that you can make jokes around, is the divide between the left and the center left. And my fear is that comedians are not going to understand that, and they're going to be doing like fly lands on Mike Pence joke, head, type Mike Pence's head jokes for the rest of the next 4 years, or bringing Trump back because Trump's going to continue to say things no matter what. Or like, what are they going to do?
Yeah.
They're going to just make it. They'd rather comedy be boring for 4 years than use all of this.
Do you
fruitful...
think has it really been good the last 4 years? I think it's been some of the worst comedy I've seen. It's been so lazy.
Yeah, it's been really painful.
I don't think any better though.
I think what they'll do that's lazy
won't get any better,
they'll make fun of Biden being old. Like they do that stuff, but it's not going to be any of the like. It's like the low hanging fruit. By the way, did you guys see? So when I had Trevor on and we talked about that. We went over Biden's record on busing. Did you ever see this clip? Let me show you this thing that I did where, did you ever hear his audio when he was talking about busing? It's kind of amazing.
Maybe.
What one of his excuses was? Hold on, let me show you.
It's like a Black empowerment thing. But
yeah. I can show you.
Joe's always looking out for the little guy, the black guy.
Yeah, I made a little clip of it. And now what I had, by the way, in my podcast, because this was from a Branko Marcetic interview I did, I cut it in. And you like the way that rolls off.
I like the way you said his name.
But what I had then was I had him saying on Pod Save America, and now I know Brie says it's okay for you to watch it. We on Useful Idiots have a different position. We don't think it's okay for you to watch it. You're not allowed to. But
I think to the gulag. Anyone should watch it.
Yeah. It's not okay. But here, I'll just show you the clip. But what happened is what was like an amazing contrast also was watching Biden say the following. Well, let me play it first and then I'll tell you the other part, the Pod Save America part. But here is Biden talking about busing. Hold on. And I don't know why this didn't get more attention. Hold on.
The busing thing?
Yeah, the fact that he made this argument. Hold on. It's such a cynical, like gross, obviously disingenuous argument. But that was a good line. At least I wasn't a prosecutor. Yeah. It was so gross.
I'm worried about what's gonna happen. Like, where are they gonna?
Okay.
Oh, there, you found it.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure he didn't mean it earnestly, but
no, of course not. But I'm beautiful. We tried to pull the it's assimilation to do busing. It's a rejection of Black is beautiful.
Oh, yeah. Let Black people have their spaces.
That was one of his tenets for rejecting it at the time. That's pretty clever in a way.
I know. He was kind of woke weaponization woke.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure he didn't mean it earnestly, but
no, of course not. But it is ahead of its time in terms of weaponizing identity politics for reactionary purposes. I edited it into a podcast that I did about him. When I interviewed Branko Marcetic.
32-year-old Joseph Biden of Delaware led the fight for the recent Senate anti-busing amendment. He says he did it because busing just isn't working.
Concept of busing, which implicit in that concept is a rejection of the whole movement of Black pride, where Black is beautiful, Black culture should be studied.
It's pretty devious and clever that he actually weaponized Black nationalism to.
I know, right?
Yeah. I mean, because I've seen the other.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. So this is a little complicated because there is a kernel of truth to the fact that there are people at the time that were making these arguments.
Yes, but that wasn't of course.
That instead of integration, that we should actually enforce separate be equal. And that was the only way. Integration meant that all these Black teachers lost their jobs because Black teachers weren't allowed to teach white kids. So if there's a co-ed schoolroom, then all this Black professional class, pharmacists, doctors, etc., got really bulldozed by integration. And that, if you just give the money to the Black school like you're supposed to, then it wouldn't be an issue. But the issue is that Joe Biden was actively caucusing with segregationists at the time.
That wasn't his position. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, it's like when the KKK and Marcus Garvey agreed on stuff. You know what I mean? It's not for the same reasons.
Yeah, and it's in complete bad faith if you're not actually accompanying that with a funding push that would enable those Black neighborhoods to act equally. So,
he wasn't doing develop. He wasn't helping like put resources into those neighborhoods, and he was not. He was not like caucusing with Black nationalists.
Right, the socialists.
Yeah,
the socialists who, by the way, but going back to that Red Scare segment, were in the 1960s saying, "Oh my God, this is Red Scare." 1950s, this is Red Scare nonsense. Don't go to civil rights movement. There's that famous poster that's like socialist. It's like a KKK poster that's like social beware. Communists don't go to this NAACP meeting or whatever.
The MLK at the Highlander School thing. No, okay.
No. I'll send it to you. It was an image that was used in my Beware the Race Reductionist article because I've always loved this. I've always loved this image. That argument that they're trying to like divide. They're trying to exploit the divisions in America. You know how you can keep them from doing that? Actually address the issues being brought up by all of these movements. It's the same with a lot of people are really mad at me on the internet right now because I made a joke about how like, Trump could probably be successful in this coup if you just gave everybody $2,000 a month. And then what could Biden do? The only thing that Biden can do back is offer them $2,500.
Trump, last week, I did a video where I was talking to Trump and I told him that he could own the libs by pardoning Assange, Snowden, Leonard Peltier, Kiriakou.
You should go on Fox News and say it. I'll tell it. He'll watch it.
He'll watch it. But now we have to add this to it. Trump, own the libs, own Biden, do a Green New Deal, do an infrastructure thing, but also make sure you do what Brie was just saying, which is give people money.
Also, they'll lose their shit if he does, because if you look at what's happening right now, Trump is threatening, though he can't actually do it because he doesn't know how. He's threatening to withdraw troops from Afghanistan, which we can't do yet because it's very premature. We've only been there for 19 years, so it's very premature to withdraw troops now. We need to wait a little longer. But the entire media like flipped out and had a meltdown last week because he was going to withdraw troops. Like anything he does, they'll freak out and flip out against.
I always quote you on it.
If he actually think we did want to give money to people, they would oppose it.
Yeah. Well, I always it's the reactionary. It's like it is so stupid because bad people do good things often for the wrong reasons. But I always quote you, Rania. You said like liberals hate liberals hate Trump every day unless he's bombing a country. Like the only time they stop hating Trump or they think he's presidential is when he bombs a country.
100%. And every time he's tried to withdraw troops from anywhere, his own advisor Jeff Jeffries, who was I think the guy who was the Middle East representative for the U.S. bragged about lying to him about how many troops we have in Syria because he wanted to withdraw them, and everybody thought it was funny and applauded it. Did you see that a couple weeks ago when Trump was on a firing spree?
Who wanted to withdraw them?
Trump wanted to withdraw troops. There was a year from Syria.
I thought he was yelling at him to trick him. I thought it was
no, they told Trump. He bragged that they told Trump they withdrew troops, but actually they didn't.
Open that up.
But I do wonder, I actually do wonder what's going to happen during this administration in terms of how they're going to be able to distract the public from the sort of internal domestic problems we have, because we do have these wars that are kind of winding down and we don't have a solid foreign boogeyman right now.
Yeah.
I think maybe China's
China.
Gonna be
Right. How dare
China.
Here, can you guys see this, by the way? This is the thing that Negroes beware, do not attend communist meetings. Paid organizers for the communists are only trying to get Negroes in trouble. Alabama is a good place for good Negroes to live in. Oh my God, but it's a bad place for Negroes who believe in social equality. The KKK is often you take heed. Tell the communist leaders to leave. Report all communist meetings to the Ku Klux Klan Post Office Box 651, Birmingham, Alabama. And then here's a picture of communism will not be tolerated. Now, what does that show, though? I'm trying to figure out.
It's a little Klansman, a little cute little Klansman wallpaper there.
Oh my God!
Yeah, on a horse. He's on a horse in a flag.
I didn't realize that rhymed.
Yep.
He's on a horse. Is there a communist below? We don't. There's not even a person.
No, there is. There's a guy with a pointy hat.
No, right. Is that a dead person underneath?
No, I don't know.
I'm trying to be. Maybe they're suggesting it. It's kind of suggestive. It could be a black figure underneath.
Oh, a communist or something.
Or just.
I think it's just the ground.
That's a pretty wild. That's a pretty wild poster.
Yeah. Let's just really be clear about what's happening here. It's the KKK saying that communists are the enemy of Black people, and that Black people should report communist meetings to the KKK. The KKK is going to represent the interests of Black people.
Yeah, my mind is blown.
The ones who are good.
It's literally what's happening right now.
Yeah. And it's also so ridiculous. Like, you think that of course, like during the Cold War, that was great. Like, again, Gerald Horne makes this point a lot, which is that like the Cold War helped the Cold War was a good motivating force in some ways in dismantling parts of Jim Crow, because it was feeding it couldn't.
Well, the U.S. was embarrassed. The U.S. was embarrassed on the world stage because they saw segregation, and they were going around saying we're democracy and we're freedom.
Right.
And that was definitely played a role. But also the Cold War, interestingly enough, did play a role, or at least the fight against communism, if you will, did play a role in some
conceding
measure of welfare. And giving some measure of welfare to people, because otherwise, like, there was popularity in socialism and communism,
which is why we got to do socialism.
Exactly. Oops.
I like that she keeps getting frozen in the same.
Go ahead and call ourselves socialists, no matter what people say. Like, people are playing different roles. I'm not saying that every political, like every person in Congress needs to go hard in the paint in the exact same way. But for those of us who are free agents, like, I don't understand why there's so many leftists who entertain these long, winding conversations about, is this a good strategy? And spend twice as much time on that than talking about educating people on what these things actually mean. Somebody has to occupy the space of the far left to exert the kind of pressure that you need to bring anybody even closely, remotely toward the middle, which is really the left, where most Americans are. You got to go big. You got to ask for total debt cancellation, because what's going to happen is they're going to cancel $10,000 a month for 30% of the population if they jump on one foot and hula hoop. And then the Democrats are going to pat themselves in the back about it and say, leftists, you're so unreasonable. There's nothing we can do to quench your thirst for more. We gave you student loan cancellation and you're still whining. See, this is why we're not going to listen to you anymore anyway. And we're going to have blown our entire load on this bull crap half measure. It's what's going to happen. It's what's coming down the pipe.
I think we're also at a huge disadvantage as the left, though, too, because like we don't have the means or the megaphone to push our messaging the way the right does. Like, there's no equivalent. We don't have a news network. Like, Fox News is like the most watched network in the country.
Yeah.
Like, we don't have that. We don't have a media structure that has that much funding that's able to reach like hundreds of millions of people. So that automatically puts us at a huge disadvantage. I often wonder, like it does suck, because there is all this anxiety and anger in the country that's like legitimate, because people are like in these sort of financially precarious situations, and they need a narrative. They don't have the right narrative to understand that they're being fed like CNN and Fox News narratives for the most part, and like it's really hard to understand, or like I don't know, like how do we push our narrative? Like, how many people do we reach? And that's difficult, and that like really stresses me out.
Yeah,
well, it's not nothing. We don't have nothing. Like,
no, right?
About back in 2016 when Rania, I was listening to you and Katie Halper. I learned about one of you from the other. I forget which direction. I think I learned about Katie from you, actually. And I was so thirsty for any media. Like, I had to stop listening to all the podcasts I listened to because they just were like simps for Hillary, and I just couldn't take it anymore. And I was so thirsty. And now we have it was like basically Chapo and like a few other people. And now we have this enormous left media infrastructure. We have all of these TV shows, TYT and RIP Michael Brooks, and, Majority Report, and, Jimmy Dore and
podcast.
Yes. Citations Needed, all of these places. And I think that you can't forget the extent, the influence that places like Alex Jones had, like off center, not mainstream media. You have Joe Rogan getting 8 million views in like 2 days on the Bernie Sanders interview, right?
Yeah, you're right. We're definitely in a better place now than existed 4 years ago or 8 years ago. 100%.
I think we just have to figure out how to kind of join forces and do mutual amplifying. You know, when Katie says we need talking points, I think that you have the right instinct. I think of myself, this is not patronizing, but I think of myself as still doing comms, just for like no one in particular. When I get up in the morning and I get on Twitter, there's a part of me that still hasn't adjusted out of just, I'm doing like comms for the left. And when I tweet things or like aggregate, I don't do any reporting, right? I'm just aggregating stuff and like framing it in a way that I think is useful.
Yeah.
And I wish there was more like a more purposeful effort to have the kind of homogeny of talking point and worldview the way that centrists of both parties do, right? You know, when their talking point was obviously that, you know, defund the police is what hurt Democrats in the election. Yeah. I think the left did a pretty good job, very strongly pushing back against that, looking at the data and saying, actually, I think it's a failure to embrace material programs that hurt the left. And look at all the things that outperformed Biden, a $15 minimum wage in Florida, all the door knocking efforts of Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib, like down and down and down the list. And I think that we had a really, I don't know who won that battle, but certainly it wasn't the moderates. Like it's a contested issue now because I think we were all in lockstep about that.
I actually want to make an explainer video. Feel free to respond here with if you want. I want an explainer video on why it wasn't, on how that's such bullshit. Because I can't. Because
someone like made a list. Was it like Ryan Knight made a list of all the people who lost and what they supported?
Yeah,
on the Democratic
remember Donna Shalala was like, all the moderates won. It's like, why'd you lose? What do you like, Fidel Castro, Donna Shalala? Like, yeah. Well, I also have I'm gonna get to the comments, but I thought there's some very short videos that I think we should play. One of them I mentioned already. So we got, and then anything else, by the way, since this is breaking news, anything else you want to tell us about Tony Blinken?
I mean,
we basically covered it, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's just like he's like a foreign policy jackass who's like pro-war, thinks America's the best, and wants to make America great again.
But now, Trump, it's interesting. Sorry, I cut you off.
No, I mean, I was just gonna say, like, a lot of I think foreign policy is just gonna stay the same. It doesn't really change that much. Right. The only difference you'll see, I think, under this administration is a positive one, which is it'll be like going back to the Iran nuclear deal, or at least trying to,
right? And
maybe not like starving Iranians anymore, but like the same thing that's happened to Venezuela under Trump is going to continue to happen under this administration. The same thing that's happening to Syria, the same thing that's happening, maybe Yemen. There could be an end to the war in Yemen, which is like significant and important. But I think you already started to see a shift towards like this whole great power competition against China.
Yeah.
And that's what's going to continue under a Biden administration, is the great power competition against China. And what I will say, if these people really cared about competing with China, they would cancel student debt.
Yeah, exactly.
And like let their people prosper with like free healthcare. Something that Chinese people don't have to worry about. If you actually want a country with a bunch of successful people in it, one way to do that is to actually take care of your population. And that's why America will lose this war against China, if you will.
Yeah.
We could be innovating and curing cancer instead of working at Booz Allen to try to take down our law school debt.
Yeah,
creating some new cluster bomb to like break the ceilings of women in Yemen.
Well, that's why the thing about Susan Rice is that she and Michelle Flourney did have shattered the glass ceiling in many other countries.
Have shattered several ceilings.
I joked about that on Useful Idiots. And Matt was with the heads of terrorists. I was like, well, I meant more. I was like, no, with alleged terrorists, right? But I was like, I just meant with the bombing. But then he did crack me up with some like really slapstick, terrible imagery.
Are we going to talk? I've avoided bringing up Cedric Richmond because I don't know if we're planning to do the environmental stuff at some point.
So we've been So basically, I just want, to thread the needle, basically one of the big themes of this. Let me just play the thing of Kamala and Kaepernick, because we mentioned it. And then we're going to go back to the woke washing of the environment. The woke washing of basically, of ruining the world. Okay, so here we have, all right. You're going to watch Kamala right now, okay?
Yes. Let's see. Sorry, I'm having chair issues.
Okay.
So that's what they start to do.
Right.
That's what they start to do. They did it then, they will do it now. You know, people have said, if you look at, for example, the heat that ended up around the bend the knee and Colin Kaepernick.
Mm-hmm.
Many smart people have said it actually was not a thing.
Mm-hmm.
The Russian bot started taking that on. Really?
Look at her face.
Like,
Look at her face. She's like, I just broke some news. Yup.
Wait,
So you know what's funny? You know what's funny about that mentality? That Russia or Iran or China is like somehow, you know, helping divide Americans, is these countries, just like the US doesn't really know how to do it to them, they don't know the internal dynamics of America enough. Particularly, I could say about Iranians, like they don't know enough to divide Americans. They wouldn't know what the fuck they were doing. They wouldn't know how to divide Americans. And it's hilarious to me that anyone actually thinks that a bunch of like Russians are going to understand to that extent how to cause that big of a rift in America.
Yeah, I agree with Black people. Like most to the extent there were some sock puppet accounts, they were like really obvious. Like there was obvious as that white guy who like carved a bee, or the white woman who carved a bee into her cheek backward because she was looking in the mirror and blamed it on a Black person.
Yeah.
You know, but to the extent that there was like real, like the sentiment was very much out there, and it was Donald Trump. It wasn't Russia. I mean, it was Donald Trump who would say had to lose Black people. What have Democrats done for you lately?
Yeah, right.
Like, if you have a problem with
Not
him
just
saying
Janet
that,
Jackson.
if you think it's cynical, right? Like you can say that it's cynical that he doesn't have any real plans for Black people and all that stuff, and that is true. But you also have to answer his question, because if you can't answer his question and offer up what you're actually going to do, it doesn't mean that people are going to vote for Trump, but it sure as heck does mean that they can stay home.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and he said that. Remember, he said that during some, like, there was some civil rights call or something. Remember there was some controversy where he was like, Black people. He said something very true, like about some Black people not like disliking Hillary, and I think he made it sound like they would voted for it. He basically acknowledged that some Black voters dislike Hillary enough to not. You know.
Yeah, it's true. If you look at Kayla Lacey at The Intercept, did a video about a week before the election in which he interviewed Black voters in Pennsylvania, and we had her on our show to talk about it. It was the last episode before the election, because it seemed clear that it was Pennsylvania was going to be it, and that no one had been paying enough attention to the disaffection of Black voters in the state, which ultimately ended up pulling them over the edge, not because of Joe Biden's efforts, but the efforts of local activists, including this third party city councilwoman that we also had on the show, this Black woman who ran and won on the Green Party in Philly, because so many people were frustrated with the Democratic Party. There was a housing advocate. There were all these people who were like, the Democratic Party is my enemy. They're not my friends. They're my enemy. People were saying, I'm not voting for Joe Biden. This kid was like, he's locked up too many of my friends. My friends are in jail. They can't get their lives back. And if you bring that up, what was the message that we got during the primary? You ain't Black.
Trump, or you're not Black. Yeah.
Right. If you dare to bring up any of these issues, your literal racial credibility was thrown into.
That's what he
look
told
at me,
Parliament.
What did they call me? What's my?
You're like a white. You're like a white supremacist.
Oh, you're white adjacent bro fodder. WABF.
All of that, but also I'm the Candace Owens of the left.
Oh wow, that's pretty impressive. That's powerful.
Actually, it's almost like a compliment. About it.
Yeah.
I mean,
she gets really paid well, though. Like,
we need a Candace Owens on the left. Actually, we need a Candace Owens on the left.
We do, yeah.
I mean, the on the left part is like, okay, so what you're just saying is I'm Black
and have like
on the left
and savvy
and really good at dating. Yeah.
Right. And a little bit cute. I think she's cute.
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
right? She's terrible. I mean, she's truly. People don't listen to her at length.
Yeah.
You know me, I listen to everything. So I was listening to her like on the Megyn Kelly show, I think, and holy crap, this woman is dangerous.
Yeah. No, she's like a really good debater. It's scary.
We gotta
terrifying.
She's weaponizing identity like a champion. But yeah, it's they don't have any substantive response. And this is again what I was getting back to with this joke about Trump offering $2,000 a month. When liberals hear something like that, they're like, oh my God, we're doomed. You can't say anything like that out loud because there's no way for us to counter that. Because in their imagination, they never imagine just responding to the harm.
Right.
Like doing better than the Republican. If Trump says liberals haven't helped Black people recently, how do you respond to that? Help Black people.
Yeah.
Offer something.
Well, they don't, but doing that would actually like bust. They're doing that would destroy their entire ideology. They don't believe in like welfare. They don't believe in like, universal programs. There are a bunch of like right wingers. At the end of the day, the liberals in this country are right wingers. We have like they're right wingers and we're dealing with them and then like a far right party. And then there's like people like us who are like making totally reasonable arguments that aren't even like the stuff that we have to argue for is so insane.
I know.
The fact that we even have to argue for healthcare.
And the irony is it is like you were saying, like Rania, it's like it is a national security. I mean, this is not stable or sustainable. Like, even if they want to just co-opt and prevent like leftism, like that's what they should be doing.
It's not even just leftism. Like, you have plenty of capitalist European countries that have like healthcare programs for their populations.
Right,
like
they probably no, but that's what I'm saying. Is like that's in what's his name? Bismarck was the guy who was like a right wing conservative. Like, he started Social Security basically because he knew he had to like provide people with something so that they didn't get too like crazy communists. Yeah. So it's like it's very short-sighted. I mean, it's extremely short-sighted. I don't know what they think people are going to do.
Well, I think it goes back to like, and I'm a complete pessimist and a cynical person. And this goes back to like, you have this like overstretched empire that's crumbling from the inside. And it kind of has two choices. Like, either you're going to keep crumbling from the inside and eventually it's going to just like decay your empire from the outside. Like, it's just not sustainable. Or like these people who are in charge can do what they did in the 40s and do something about it so that they don't so that the country doesn't crumble from the inside. Like, those are their choices. And the people you have in charge right now are just all so short-sighted because they're all like a bunch of corporate hacks, like who only care about profit and they only care about their next job when they leave government, which is going to be for some private corporation where they make loads of money because of their time working in the public sector. Like, that's just how it works. And I don't know how you change that. Like, I
think they're not afraid enough. Like, the model that you're setting up is that eventually there was so much social pressure around the Great Depression and people felt so desperate that they were like, holy crap, we need to let a steam valve off. We got to do something or else this whole thing is going to explode. And I think that an assessment has been done and we haven't challenged the system enough. A bunch of peaceful protests. I'm not telling you to do anything else, but the reality is a bunch of peaceful protests with a bunch of, well-meaning Oberlin students. Sorry, you went to Wesleyan. I'm good. Yeah. Well-meaning Oberlin students. With fines, it's like, it's beautiful, it's good, it helps. It had helped draw media attention and apply a certain amount of pressure and reclaim a certain degree of the narrative. But now it's winter and there's COVID and people have stopped, and I get it, I understand. But if we are not arguing for the most radical version of everything, we're not gonna you have to reach for the moon to land among the stars or whatever. We're not gonna get that.
On top of the argument, which is obviously essential, you also need the ground level organization.
Yes.
And one of the places that you can actually, light a fire under the asses of people who are in charge is when it comes to labor. Yes. And I think that's where there's like a huge disconnect too, because we don't have labor unions that function in this country anymore.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's like you have to have the intellectual arguments. And I think we actually have that. Like, I think
but we need more there needs to be more exposure to those. We do have the arguments. We don't have the means of communication enough, and we don't have the labor. And it's funny because like it's when you mentioned Briahna, like you mentioned Chapo, and I had Matt Christman on, and he was basically like, it's just like not enough. Like, obviously he's on Chapo, but he was saying like, that's not and I think it's true. And it's like there's ideology and there's the Overton window gets shifted, and certainly like people are, but it's like we need to do that other part of it, which is like which is kind of the labor stuff. In fact, that I remember when we're having this chat, I was like, well, a labor movement would be nice.
But Bernie Sanders was trying to.
I know, and anyway, but so I have the Cecilia Munoz video that I brought up that I can play. And then we can talk about what's his name? Cedric.
Yeah.
And then we got to play Cedric. And then we got to play this John Meacham. I was so mad when I was watching. So let's see. I'm trying to think of the order. Let's watch should we watch the Cecilia Munoz thing since we're talking about Empire? All right. Did anyone, yeah, let me not talk about Meacham yet because I got too upset. Oh, Mariposa writes, Briahna Joy Gray was one of my most favorite people. Thank you for always being on point. I feel represented by your voice. Happy holidays, y'all. Thank you.
Very sweet. Somebody who was a lawyer, a 1L, or someone who said they were a lawyer gave you $50 earlier. I feel like you should call them out.
Oh, yeah. I'm just looking at right now. Let's see. Ruki Vasupuram. I'm a 30-something JD Brown girl who withheld her press vote for the first time ever. I want student loan cancellation, healthcare for all, no wars, defunding the police, and on in that vein. You ladies rock. Thank you. Thank you, Ruki.
You guys are great. Thank you for supporting all this independent media.
Yeah, seriously. There's some more comments. Let's see. Hold on.
You have like so many commenters. It's really cool.
Arland Everest sent Katie Halper, Randy Rainbow 2024. Okay, I'll look into that. Ruth P said the U.S. money is backed by guns. Chris Miller, acting Secretary of State. Gold is a bet on a dystopian future. Bitcoin is a bet on humanity. Paul Tudor Jones. What are your thoughts on Bitcoin and direct democracy? Okay, well, we'll get back to that because that's an interesting thing. We'll get back to that. Vic Shepard, re-Biden, he was telling the truth about not having empathy. That is true. He was being honest. He was being introspective there. And Edwin Gentunen, we need Brie to live stream a DS9 rewatch. Was that Deep Space Nine?
It is. We have to get our Twitch channel up and going because I would very much like to do that. And I would like to justify all of my binge TV watching habits.
I'm doing that too. And you should come on because I'm going to do a binge. I have a Twitch and I'm going to do a thing where I watch the Amazon On Demand stuff because you can watch those. It's like they have some deal. Not Amazon Demand, Amazon Prime. So
I'm still using my ex's Amazon Prime account, so I can do this.
He better not change the password. If you do, you're canceled. If you change that password. Rania, show us some of your 3D prints.
Oh, there's a 3D printer behind me. It's not mine.
Oh, okay.
My nephew's.
And then Brent McKenney, we are supporting the show right now because these ladies rock. Thank you. Sam Tsohonis, you have to reveal your own flaws in order to communicate about the flaws of others. That's true. Tony DeMeo, greetings, beautiful socialist ladies. Greetings. Thank you. Log 66, you're overwhelmingly beautiful, all three of you, and I find that distracting. I am weak. Okay, well, you'll have to do some push-ups or something. And Ruth B, appreciate all three of you with the clapping hand thing and the smiley face. Oh, and then who tweeted this out? Awesome. This is awesome. Thank you, Brad. Latin America is not your backyard. Bass Pankai. He actually literally tweeted. I also keep these videos handy for such an occasion. This is Cecilia Munoz, worked under Obama as Director of Domestic Policy and Part-Time Outreach Latinos. So let me just show you. That's like, I'm going to play that. I actually have it open, but shout out to, thank you to Beth. That's BASSPANKAI. But here, I have that open, that thing. So let's watch the Cecilia Munoz clip that we were talking about. And remember, as Rania and Brie pointed out, this is like, they're always trying to shame people. Not that anyone thinks that Trump wasn't terrible on immigration, but yeah, we're just pointing to it's not enough to say we're better than Trump.
Will this administration continue?
Was the sound going through there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but the picture's weird.
No, I'm going to do that in 1 second.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Will this administration continue to oversee the deportation of 400,000 people a year?
As long as Congress gives us the money to deport 400,000 people a year, that's what the administration is going to do. That's our obligation under the law. We will be strategic about how we do it. And the number of those folks who are either criminals or recent arrivals will continue to go up. But yes, this is our obligation under the law. And while we have the debate about reforming the law, we must enforce it, and we will do that.
Are you saying that this administration believes that there are 400,000 serious criminals who are not in jail right now and who should be deported? 400,000 people. Where are you going to find them if you're saying that your emphasis is only on serious criminals?
As I pointed out, of the people that we remove, of the 400,000 people removed in the last year, about half of them are serious criminals under the definition of immigration law. And the vast majority of the other half are either recent arrivals, people who are in the process of crossing at the border, or people who have recently been deported or who had previously been deported and are reentering. So that makes up the bulk of the 400,000 in previous years. And if the trends continue, that'll be reflected in the next 400,000 that we remove. But Congress passed a law, and Congress appropriates funds to implement that law, and the executive branch's job is to enforce it. How we do it matters a lot, but the president can't say to the Congress, I'm not going to bother to enforce this particular law because these are really compelling people. That's not how democracy works.
Boo. So Biden, this is someone who Biden has named or is considering naming.
On his transition team.
No, wait.
She's on his transition team.
Yeah.
She's on his transition team.
It's
and
disgusting.
Disgusting.
Horror. That's
also why does she act like that? Like she's from Fargo. She's from Detroit. You don't act like that when you're from Detroit.
You know,
I was in Bolivia, by the way.
I went to Arizona like 6 years ago, and I watched this thing called Project Streamline, where they take all these people who like 7 or 8 at a time, who are like literally just wearing the clothes on their backs that they arrived in, and they sentence them to private prison time before deportation. Like all at once, they're chained together. This was happening under the Obama administration. That's what that woman was supporting. It was one of the most heinous, disgusting things I've ever seen. These people were all like poor, from Guatemala, from El Salvador, a lot of them from Honduras, fleeing the violence that came after the Obama administration overthrew the democratically elected government there. Which is something
I wouldn't call it a coup. Hillary Clinton wouldn't call it a coup. And
this is something else we
about
don't talk about enough is like everybody who has such an issue with all these refugees and like immigrants coming to America, they're oftentimes fleeing like the consequences of U.S. foreign policy.
Blowback,
but that's so disgusting to watch, because it's like we need to care about those people just like we cared about the people who were being separated under Donald Trump. That was happening under Barack Obama.
Yeah.
That policy of detainment and family separation, though not to the same degree as under Trump, was happening under Obama, and the legal framework for it was actually like built under the Obama administration. And it's like everybody cared, like Brie mentioned, like everyone cared so much about kids in cages. And if we don't vote for Joe Biden, we don't care about kids in cages. But I guarantee you, in 3 months, all these people, all their concern about kids in cages is just going to evaporate. It won't exist anymore. Yeah.
Right.
So
there's
we were
a really
having
funny meme about it. That's
Go
like, no, there's just a funny meme. It's like kids in cages will decrease. It's like, no, media coverage of kids in cages will decrease or something.
Yeah, I think I've seen that.
Yeah, at South by last year, 2019, I ended up at this movie called The Infiltrators that was all about these kids. It was filmed in 2012, but they were like my age. So like they were young in 2012. And they were DACA recipients who had a certain amount of protection through DACA, who intentionally got themselves arrested at the border and detained because people who were being detained weren't being allowed to have access to counsel and basically couldn't connect with the outside. And so they infiltrated in order to help them get released. And they did it because there were parents of these DACA recipients who didn't have those same protections. And they were basically doing it to get their parents and the parents of their colleagues out of jail. And when I talked to her on the Bernie podcast here, The Burn, and she made the point that when they were trying to get financing for this movie, it was during the Trump administration, and everyone was very excited about it until she told them that it was filmed during the Obama administration, and they couldn't blame Trump for any of the actions that were going on in the movie. And then they had an enormous difficulty just getting financing to publicize the film because people don't care.
So shameful. That's so shameful. That's so
it really is shameful. And Rania, you did that video where you remember that crazy viral video of this woman arguing in front of judges that it did not violate the law to have children without like toothbrushes or sleeping under like
her name. The Justice Department.
Yeah, and everyone was like, "Oh my God, I can't believe this woman! What a cruel person!" And she was like an Obama person.
Yeah, she was an Obama appointee to the Justice Department. And she just continued serving in her capacity under Donald Trump. And the thing is, under Obama,
and the judges were like, "Are you kidding?" Like the judges were saying that.
And everybody cared. I'm really happy everyone cared so much about this horrible, cruel system we have of detaining and deporting people in this country that largely profits the private prison industry. But like, why don't you care when Democrats do it? It's obvious. It's just like a team sport. It's a team sport for these pundits, and it's disgusting because actual people's lives like don't change. Well, they do change, but for the negative, like no matter who's in charge. And I wish there was a way for these people to keep caring under this next administration. And I don't think they will. And it's like, it's just horrible too. Cause like, I guess I don't think of myself as naive, but there's certain things that I thought wouldn't be under a Biden administration. Like I thought for sure, okay, now everyone gets it. Like we're going to calm down with deportations. Right. And then you put this woman in charge, you know,
and
like the same way I felt about student loan, like student debt. I'm like, really? Like after all that, you're still like saying you're going to do $10,000 and it's means tested and that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the way she was trying to insulate herself using the law, like that's like classic prosecutor lingo. The whole point is that I don't know exactly how ICE works, but when it comes to prosecutors, the whole point is that they're supposed to have discretion.
Right.
You have discretion. Your job is substantive justice, not locking people up.
Right.
Well, also, what she was saying was bullshit too, because she said half of the 400,000 were violent criminal, or I don't know if she used violent or not, but like. But basically, under the Obama administration, under the Bush administration, which continued into the Obama administration, they classified legal re-entry into the country as a felony.
Like a felony, yeah.
So a lot of the people they were deporting for supposed criminal charges, they were charged with felonies, but it was for the re-entry into the country. Like it was people who had kids here, were trying to get back to them because they've been deported once, or they're just really desperate for work, or their home country, there's a lot of gang violence or whatever it may be. And so classifying that as a felony, like that's what she's talking about. She's saying there's 200,000 criminals. Well, they're criminals because you're charging them with something that's actually not violent at all.
Yeah.
It's really just like deceptive and disgusting. And that clip should make people want to throw up.
Yeah. Wow. This is really, someone tweeted out like a clip of Munoz and was like, fact, Latinos in America are the largest minority voting bloc. The Democrats, this is back in May, need better messaging to bring out the vote. A reason why one of the choices for vice president should also include a Latina. And then it's Senator Cortez Masto, who is a U.S. senator from the great state of Nevada. But she just misidentifies her as she plays a clip of Hinojosa of Munoz. So then Maria's like, not her, that's Cecilia Munoz. Anyway, sorry, ignore that. That was, I got excited. I thought that Hinojosa had said like, not her, don't name her, which she should.
But imagine if the cable news played those clips over and over again. Imagine if the cable news covered for even 1 second. Like Erin Brockovich was trending on Twitter earlier this week because she had the audacity to criticize a Biden EPA pick who left the Obama administration to go work for DuPont Chemicals.
I hate these people.
Helping them protect themselves from liability against some of the worst crap that's poisoning our countrymen. And now he's gone back through the rotating door and nobody cares. This is what I'm saying about the reporting part. Like, I don't know what I would do. Like, I wouldn't know anything if not for people like David Sirota and like Dan at the American Prospect. Like, I literally wouldn't even know.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's unbelievable. And also, it's like, you don't even have the respect to lie to us, Biden. Like, just pretend that you're not naming terrible people.
Consider a lot of these people that he's hiring or appointing all are like paid analysts for MSNBC and CNN.
Well, that's okay. We're gonna get
all of them are paid analysts.
So this is a perfect transition, but don't let me forget. I gotta like write it down on my forehead or something so I look at it on screen. But we have to play the Meacham. We have to go out with the Meacham clip. Speaking of analysts and MSNBC, but this is a good transition to the greenwashing, woke washing, right? So sports droppings writes cocktail wokes and corporate Stockholm syndrome victims already playing loosey with the football on holding Biden accountable. Keep up the good work, ladies. Thank you. And that is so true because, for example, And Ruth Pete goes, will the Dems release citizens who shouldn't be in prison to appease the people and replace their bunks in private prisons with immigrants who are currently in cages if they aren't dead or missing or discussing other things? Good question, Ruth. I hope you're not watching this, Dems, because I really don't want to see the Dems actually include that as a policy thing. So let's talk about the environmental decision that you mentioned, Brie. And to set that up, I just want to give as context. I kind of referred to this pretty incoherently earlier, but I'm just going to be a little self-referential and show some of my tweets only because it's actually relevant. Hold on. This is actually okay. Here it is. Ready? This is the setup. Ready? So I was talking about an article. Remember, we were talking about this at the beginning of the show. So this was a piece in Politico. And the headline was Purity Test. Democrats clash over Biden diversity goals. The debate over whether corporate insiders should be in the mix for cabinet positions is shaping up to be a major point of tension within the party. Black Democrats are urging Joe Biden to resist growing pressure from the left to impose an anti-Wall Street purity test on his hiring decisions if elected, warning that it threatens the party's desire to boost diversity in powerful executive branch posts. Progressives have been calling on Biden to take a hard line in filling out his cabinet, with groups such as Justice Democrats and Sunrise Movement demanding that he pledge to appoint 0 current or former Wall Street executives or corporate lobbyists to his administration. But Black Democrats on Capitol Hill and on K Street say that's in direct conflict with the party's overarching diversity goals and would keep many people of color, including those with ties to the financial world, from ascending to key positions long dominated by white males. And then we're going to quote Rep. Meeks. We've got to fix all of the problems that were created over the last 4 years. Yeah, that's only those problems. Everything before then, we don't have to address any of that. A senior lawmaker on the House Financial Services Committee and a member of the Congressional Black Caucus said, we're going to need every hand on deck. Okay, you can have hands on deck that weren't on Wall Street, by the way. Black business leaders that Democrats have floated for potential Biden cabinet positions include Roger Ferguson, the CEO of financial services giant TIAA, and a one-time vice chair of the Federal Reserve, as well as John Rogers and Melody Hobson, the co-CEOs of Ariel Investments. The emerging debate over whether corporate insiders should be in the in the mix is shaping up to be a major point of tension within the party as it tries to unify around Biden's campaign.
Melody Hobson is George Lucas's wife.
Oh, look at that. Wow. Did not know that. All right.
I know all the Black millionaires.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the gossip behind it. Yeah.
We've seen the effects of corporate control over the American government for our entire lives. It has blocked universal access to healthcare, real action on the climate crisis, and started endless wars that waste taxpayer dollars. We need to invest in schools and jobs, said Emily Mayer, a political director of
Wow, that sounds pretty racist to me.
I know, totally. One of the groups trying to discourage Biden from appointing executives and lobbyists. We reject the false choice. Exactly. It's a totally false choice, right? So that was back in September. Also, I love the way that they say that it's like Black Democrats. Like who? Which Black Democrats? Like me.
Yeah. They did this in 2016. They always like trot out like the most pro-corporate people from the Black Congressional Caucus.
Yeah, it's awful.
And
then,
like,
yeah.
To be, who was it they were doing that with during the election?
Oh, well, Bakari Sellers was a huge.
Yes, but I mean actual members of Congress who would be like remember they were trying to say that
John Lewis did the whole I didn't see Bernie Sanders at the March on Washington.
Yeah, Bernie Sanders wants to kill HBCU.
Not that he didn't see him at the March on Washington. He didn't see him in the civil rights movement. That's where he didn't see him when he took attendance. But he did see Hillary and Bill. He actually hadn't, because we know from a book he hadn't met Bill there, and also they weren't really there. Anyway.
Right. But it was also for the student debt issue, or for free college, for free college tuition. They brought out John Lewis to be like, that's racist. It's going to basically like bankrupt historically Black colleges. Just really grotesque. Like they do that like this, like the corporate Dems do this every time. They always bring out their the Black people to call things racist.
I'm sorry. I'm upset that we mentioned John Lewis. I mean, I don't smear him. I just say what he did, and I think he did a lot of good things, and he also did a lot of bad things. And I'm not like defaming him, and I think it's sad. But he also, he said some stuff that wasn't okay.
He said some things. So look, the reality is an article really needs to be written, and I guess I have to do it because if it's not written by a Black person, then it's going to be dismissed out of hand.
Yeah.
The article has to be written about the extent to which Black legislators have been used for this purpose, specifically because I think to make it not about them being bad people in particular, there are enormous fundraising requirements in Congress. Black Congress people tend to come from lower income districts because we're all gerrymandered into these Black districts, and that's how they got elected in the first place. Which, by the way, a lot of them are actually pro-Republican gerrymandering because it means they get to preserve their predominantly Black district and not be at risk of getting voted out. But that's a whole nother thing. And that they have a more difficult time raising money in their districts because they have less affluent districts. So they're going to be more susceptible to lobbying and, gifts from petrochemical companies and Coca-Cola and landlord associations and all the other kinds of people who are doing a great deal of harm to Black folks. So I don't know what's in these people's hearts. I don't know what they would want to do in an ideal world. But the reality is that they repeatedly work against interests of their constituents. And Cedric Richmond is no exception.
Right. So tell us about, one more self-referential tweet, I promise.
Sure.
But it's actually about that. I mean, you could set it up, but here's how this is how Jonathan, well, you tell us about Cedric Smith first, and then Richmond, sorry. Cedric Richmond. Tell us about Cedric Richmond. And then
So he's a representative from a district which includes New Orleans, and he has been tapped to be, he's on the transition team, I believe, and also tapped to be basically the climate liaison for Joe Biden.
For public engagement or something,
Yeah, which is hilarious because as it turns out, he takes more oil and gas money than almost anyone in Congress. There are only 4 people who take more than him. And his district is one of the most polluted in America. So it contains 7 out of the 10 most polluted air tracts in America. Okay, this is who we're talking about to be the climate liaison for the candidate who we were all supposed to hold our nose and vote for because he believed in science and he understood that we have only a short period of time to reverse the effects of cataclysmic climate change, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we were supposed to believe and understand that the good faith negotiations of the Sunrise Movement over the course of the summer were emblematic of the kind of partnership that the left should be engaging with Joe Biden, and that it was going to pay dividends. And now here we are.
As your friend Chomsky said.
As my friend Chomsky said. And now here we are, having given up all of our leverage in the weeks after the election. The man isn't even in office yet, and he's already signaling strongly that he's going to be wantonly disrespectful of science and even the veneer, even the superficial appearance of caring about science.
Right.
So at least one New York Times reporter responded to left pushback against Cedric by saying, it's not a good look. It's not a good look for the Sunrise Movement to be attacking a Black man out the gate.
We got it. Hold on, I got this. His name is Jonathan Martin, who hates Bernie Sanders, by the way. Like he's cursed him out. Okay, so the Sunrise Movement had the audacity because they hate Black. Oh, so did we mention? I mean, so Richmond is Cedric. Is it Cedric or Cedric?
It's just Cedric.
Okay, Cedric is Black, right?
Yes.
So the Sunrise Movement had the audacity to say that he was a bad choice. They were upset about it, right? And as you can see, Cedric Richmond's hire is betrayal due to big oil ties and silence on pollution in his district. That's a quote, right? So Jonathan Martin, not an op-ed writer, right? He's a reporter. He's like a reporter at the New York Times, home, but of course, so is Sydney Ember. So he writes 21 preview, ... picking a fight right from the start with the most influential Black staffer in the White House who represented an energy-heavy district. So he's mad at these very rude climate kids who have the audacity to not refrain from criticizing this person because he's Black And that's just like really. So then you got Katie Halper. I thought this was going to land more, didn't it? 21 preview, picking a fight right from the start with the most respected youth climate change org, who's I meant executive director, not like former, who's executive director. Varsh Prakash is a brown woman. New York Times reporter. Thank you. You shouldn't care about climate change, which disproportionately affects POC or Richmond's record because he's Black. It's true.
Right.
Like we gotta have a rainbow coalition of environmental destruction. Actually, can I just play this one thing? It's actually it's really funny. I had Cori Bush on and right when that article came out in September, and I asked her thoughts on that. Hold on, let me show you what she said. Oops. So I was like, "Is that okay?"
There's no sound.
Okay, I'll play my very leading. Okay, it's a very leading question, obviously, but no surprise there. Hold on. Okay. Can you guys hear?
No.
Oh, you can't hear? Okay, 1 second. I know why.
I can't hear it.
1 second.
Her depth of field is fantastic. I need her camera set up.
I know. How did she do that, right? It's so good. Hold on.
We're saving up. We're using all of your Patreon gifts at Bad Faith to get some nice cameras so we can look a little better.
Oh, good. Yeah, I need to do that. Hold on. Let me just open this thing up. I'm saving, and this is okay. I'm using your Patreon to get someone to do this stuff because my arms are fucking tired also. All right. Hold on.
I had to push back against someone, by the way, today who said that you leftists are just trying to primary all these Black people by using Cori. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh. By
we're
using
trying
Cori.
Primary.
Oh, she ran against an older Black man because a Black woman who was formerly homeless and lived out of her car, and a nurse and fought, like protested nonviolently. Ferguson. Yeah. She's a terrible white straight male racist. I know you can hear that now. About this, which I mean, to me, it's just so offensive because it suggests that Black people are. Sorry, guys. Oh, see, give me your Patreon money so I don't have to do this. Street. The only Black people who can fill a cabinet are going to be from Wall Street. Do you know what I'm talking about? That controversy over, and I know you've been very vocal about this. Which I mean, to me, it's just so offensive because it suggests that Black people are some kind of monolith and also some kind of corporate monolith. So, what is your response to that?
It would be different if we were if my cousin that lives around the corner from me was hiring and she was trying to find, somebody for a position and she had to put it out on like one of the platforms. Would it be harder for people to probably know that she's looking for that? Probably yes. We're talking about somebody running for president of the United States. And so people are like throwing resumes, like just want to know where do I send my resume? There are amazing people all across this country that not only live on the coast, but that live in middle America, that live north, south. We have to open this up to make sure that people who are not tied to Wall Street,
Jonathan Martin, you should watch this,
or these corporate lobbyists have this opportunity because they're going to come with different experiences and different values that so many Americans right now want. We might not always support the progressive candidate like we should, but we support progressive values, and so people want to see that. And me personally, I don't care what color you are, I definitely do not want someone who's first shown that they would rather stand with Wall Street or be a part of that whole, be a part of that that whole sector, or someone who was a part of people who are taking money from, when I think about police brutality bonds, how Wall Street, how they how they profit off of Black murder at the hands of police. So to even want someone to be a part of that whole thing, I'm just absolutely not. And to think that we aren't smart enough, like that, like we don't have, there are no Black people across the country that can do this work other than the people that made it to that part where they're working with lobbyists, or they're working. And I'm not coming against those people anyway, because some of them took the job because they took a job because they needed a job, so that's fine for them. But we can do something different. And one thing that we've seen, Katie, is when we do stuff different,
she's so great.
We can still make change and make progress. I did something different. People said you can't run as a protester and go to Congress. You can't run as a this or that. I did it. So we got to stand on something. Show the American people.
There's this myth that's, and again, it's really offensive. And to me, it's just like, okay, we get it. Either you only hang out with Wall Street people, Biden and the team, or whoever's putting this message out that it's a purity test to want people not from corporate America, not from Wall Street. Or you're just, or the people making that argument either don't know any people of color who are progressive because they only hang out with Wall Street people, or they're being cynical and lying. But your victory as a progressive, I think, also is really important because it shatters this myth that you know, Black voters are a firewall and also centrists, and you know, the progressive ideas like that Bernie Sanders has, that's only good for straight white men. Doesn't resonate with with people of color. So what's your response to that?
It makes no sense because all we're saying is people deserve food and they deserve health care and they deserve clean water and clean air and they deserve, a livable wage and, they deserve a quality of life. That's all we're saying. What has happened is because some people in power are the billionaires, the 1%, and then all of these other power structures that are around them decided that we don't like that kind of talk because we need to keep the haves and the have-nots. We need to make sure that line is very clear, that they decided to put this out as like white liberal propaganda and all of that, when actually we're talking about something that should have been done before. It shouldn't even be a basic rights, access to healthcare, water, those things we shouldn't even have to ask for them, but they have programmed society in such a way to where we think that you have to be of the upper echelon, or you have to be someone with a particular title, in order to have these things, or you have to pull yourself up by some fake bootstraps so you have boots, and so we come against that. And I stood with Bernie Sanders because he was speaking about things that I know people in my community face every single day and have been struggling for a long time to figure out how to get out. And I know because I'm one of those people. Every single thing he was up talking about, it started with me. I didn't have to look any further than myself because I've been low wage, I've been unhoused, I've been uninsured, I've had lived in housing that was inadequate. So I understand.
You've been attacked by the police physically.
I've been attacked. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Brutalized. Absolutely. Stomped by the police. Yes. So I get it. I get it. And it will stay the same if we don't have people who are willing to be champions and leaders and talk about this. One thing you can't do, you can't send me a death threat and scare me away. It's happened. You can't scare me with that. You can't threaten me and scare me to shut my mouth, because what happens is when we shut our mouths, people die. So I won't, you can't scare me. You can't back me away from speaking about it. And the example that I had about speaking about those things, like right here, right now in my face, was Bernie Sanders. And not that other people aren't, but speaking about those particular things, healthcare and all of that, that was Bernie Sanders. And so as a nurse, it meant so much to me. And so that's why, forget the color. Forget what people are saying about it. Is it what you need? And if you don't need it, what about your niece or your cousin or somebody else you know? What about the person that comes to you and asks you for $50? Every time you turn around, they need some money for something. Well, you know what? Maybe they wouldn't need that. And you wouldn't have to say, oh, good gracious, here they come again, if we had the basic things we need in our communities.
It's just a cynical framing that you
I
this mutually exclusive choice, that more
Yeah,
representation
I'm
or progressive policies, as if only straight white men can bring that around, because only straight white men know what that means. I mean, it's just, it's so offensive and it's so insulting, right? I mean, I couldn't believe it when I read that. And it's like, that's a purity test. If that's a purity test, then so is having a more diverse cabinet, which I don't think it's a purity test. Those are values. It's a value to have more diversity and more representation. And it's a value to have people who aren't from Wall Street.
Exactly. Exactly. The people are there. Like, people even came to me after people saw my tweet and said, we're here, like, where do we send the resume? And right, exactly. Like, what is it? Right. And then also, if that is the case, did we, if there are not enough, if there's such a small group of Black people that can do this work, which I know that's not the case, but let's just say if there is this for argument's sake, if there's this small group of Black people that can do this work, then what has your work been all of this time, knowing that this was the case and and what was your work to make sure that there would be more?
Right.
Yeah. So I guess you just decided that was no big deal,
Right.
So, I mean, we're talking about people who've been in these seats for a very long time. What work were you doing then to make sure that we have people that are Black that are coming up, learning, being trained, and going through the education to be able to hold these type of seats?
Right.
Just saying.
Great ending, right? Isn't she great?
Yeah.
I forgot about that. It ends on just
I love that she was like, I love that she said like when she was like, forget about the color in the sense of like, stop letting them delude you with that.
Yeah.
I will say that right now, I would much rather have, if my choice was literally, not that this is a choice, but if the choice was some like white guy, some white straight man from Nebraska named Buzz, if the choice was between him, who supports ending wars and giving us free healthcare and canceling student debt, the choice is between that guy and some like Black trans woman,
Druze,
or like a Latinx like person, I don't know, like, whatever,
Palestinian, whatever,
someone from like an oppressed identity group being in charge, but also like being from Wall Street and some like weapons company. Like I would choose the straight white man if that's the game that's actually happening.
Yeah,
but it's
I
not
say this
even
all
the
the
game. That's
time.
like not even actually what the choice is, right?
I said this about Kamala, and I'll say it again. The argument that she had to be ruthless to Black people to get ahead, if that's your argument, that Black people have it harder and you got to show that you're not going to show favorability to Black people. This is about Obama too. He couldn't be too nice to Black people or people were going to undermine him. And so we had to throw Black people under the bus. Kamala had to throw Black people under the bus. If that's your argument, I, like Corey, don't believe that that's true. But if that is your argument, that's a real good argument for not having Black people in power.
Yeah.
If I had to choose between Kamala Harris locking up a bunch of people who are my cousins, I got cousins in California. my mom's biological father's family is all in California. If I have to choose between you locking up them and Kamala Harris getting to put on an off-white suit and be the next vice president of the United States of America, I'm going to choose my family and the literally millions of people locked up over her one woman's personal ambition.
Right. Mm-hmm. And Obama actually said something along the lines of, like in his book, that he had to kill people or he had to like bomb people.
He wanted to save them, but and then Rahm Emanuel was obsessed with it.
To prove he's not a softie.
He's like Rahm Emanuel. We did a reading, Nando and I, like the I guess this week's episode, but Rahm Emanuel knew that a liberal president couldn't be seen as soft on this stuff, so he had to kill some people.
I had to kill some folks.
Yeah, and also he had to kill some folks. He also had to read some Marx and Marcuse and Fanon and Gwendolyn Brooks to try to get
depending
in the
on which
of women who he was studying with at Columbia. Yeah, but I mean, I remember Trevor made the point from Champagne Sharks made that point when I interviewed him, like before the I don't know when was this? I guess it was sometime after the 2017 or something. I don't remember, but he made this point. He was like, if Kamala has to work, like you were saying, twice as hard and be twice as rough, that's just an argument against her. Like, I don't want her then.
Right.
Like, if she's going to be that much harder on Black people, that's why we shouldn't have her then.
They made the same argument for Hillary Clinton, by the way. There was like several people who wrote op-eds in, back in 2015, 2016, saying, well, she had to be ruthless as Secretary of State because she's a woman.
Yeah.
Well, that's a great argument for not having women in power.
Then let's fix that. Let's work on that. And in the meantime, we're going to have to appoint some men who don't have to be ruthless, which again, it's not true because it's not like if you're a man.
But that's the logical
but if that's true, then and this is also the problem with like the politics of biography or the politics of like individual. Like, I don't give a shit. And this, like, to me, there's a real line in the sand between like activists and between like altruistic people solidaristic people versus self-interested people. Like, if you are a boomer, and my mom's a boomer who hates, she loves Bernie. She does not like Clinton. And she is a boomer and she studied Virginia Woolf and she's a feminist, as like feminist as they come. and did her PhD on Virginia Woolf and stuff. But like, I'm just thinking of that terrible woman who wrote like The Destruction of Hillary Clinton. Like, if your personal narrative, like, because Hillary Clinton's biography resonates with you and that you care more about that than like the policy that affects countless women who have so much less power than you, like, I don't care. Like, that's actually just selfish. That's not feminist. So like, if you're someone who really you identify with Kamala's story, I'm not saying that there's no truth to the idea that there are double standards. Of course there are double standards. But like, if that's more important to you than the treatment of countless Black people with much less power than Kamala Harris,
right?
Like, what is politics for you?
Katie, I just sent you a link to an article. I know I've talked about this a lot, but Li Fang wrote back in 2018, I guess, about Kamala Harris. It was, I think, before she announced her campaign, and she ran. He did research on the ground in San Francisco and found a bunch of her old campaign flyers in a library there in some old box, and it's from her race against Terrence Hanlon, who was the genuinely progressive district attorney of San Francisco before Kamala Harris beat him. And she ran on a tough on crime agenda. And if you look at some of you should pull up, if you can, some of these flyers. If anybody else, if a white man had, used this kind of imagery of like chalk outlines on a cracked asphalt, and like a Latino with like throwing up, well, you don't know what race he is, but a tan person in a black and white picture with tattoos throwing up gang signs. You have to click the link to see to explore the full mailer. But where's the gang sign one?
Where is
That's horrible. Oh my God.
Wait,
what you're describing sounds
racist. Can you email it to me, Brie? Sorry, I have to.
Oh, okay, I can put it.
Thanks. Or you can send it to me in the StreamYard thing.
Okay. Well, I'm in Gmail, so
great.
I'm pasting.
Yeah, and all these things that we're talking about, by the way, like obviously it's fun talking with like comrades like Brie and Rania. I kind of hate when people use that word. I don't know why. I mean, I come from a long line of communists, but it's just
are you like anti-red? Is that
no, not at all. It's more like people who I shouldn't shame, but it's like people who just like discovered socialism. I really shouldn't do this. It's so terrible. But I'm being
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Oh, Mariposa, right. I'm a transgender Latina from Texas. I voted and volunteered for Bernie both in 2016 and 2020. Donated hundreds of my hard-earned money. Sorry, all the Black and brown candidates were corporatists. Not my fault.
You know what, Mariposa? Mariposa, one of the things that never got covered was that there were records set for how much Black people gave. Well, they're all kind of records set, but I remember specifically that Black people gave more to political candidates in the cycle than they ever have. And guess who was the number one recipient of that money? Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders got more money from Black donors than any other candidate.
I thought it was not the recipient.
Oh no, certainly nobody gave any money to Kamala.
Yeah, I didn't think anyone gave money to Kamala Harris.
That's why she had to drop out. She couldn't fund her campaign.
So it's amazing. Bernie Sanders had so much support from.
Yeah, we're gonna get to that too when we get to the John Meacham thing, which I was yelling at the TV. My parents were like, "All right, enough. We agree with you, but you need to be quiet now." Okay. Wow, Brie, I just got the thing that you sent. Wow, hold on. This is the article that Brie sent, and then sorry, I know Ron. I was like, it'll be a short stream, but
sorry, we always get like this when we all get together.
I know.
As ends a clucking.
Yeah. I don't even know how to.
Oh my God. Holy
enough
shit.
is enough. Murder up 30%. Skyrocketing rates of youth in jails. Another generation lost to gang violence. Who hears the cry for help?
Yep.
Okay, so that's an ad. A new voice for justice. That's a Kamala Harris for district attorney mailer.
What year was that? Like 1975?
I don't know. I mean, I wish when she was that little girl creating racist flyers was me.
Yeah. Now scroll down to the next one is an outline for disaster. Which district attorney has ranked last in convictions every year for the last 8 years? So she's running against Hanlon saying he hasn't locked up enough people.
What is that even? Is that that's a weird image too.
That's a strange, it's like a strange chalk outline.
And if you click and open it up, there's like a link underneath that will open it up and see to the inside of that pamphlet.
Oh no! Do I want to?
It shows it shows her making the argument that Terrence Hallinan hasn't convicted enough people.
Yeah, it says okay. It says San Francisco DA Terrence Hallinan ranks dead last among California's 58 county prosecutors. Last in convictions, first in plea bargains. That sounds pretty good, actually.
Yep.
You want that. Like, you remember, you're supposed to pretend.
Right.
What year was this?
I thought California was supposed to be a progressive state.
I think the late 90s.
Yeah, I mean,
well,
okay. And then this is interesting.
2003.
Oh yeah, I was like, shit, that's a little early for us to be like, yeah, but no, now we can really be like, that's just ridiculous at this point. Terrence, this is the guy she beat, right? Terrence Hallinan confronts the police officer he claims beat his head open while he was trying to help a girl to safety away from the police during a sit-in in San Francisco State College, California.
That's the real one.
That's the real one, yeah.
That's the real one. So San Francisco, this is like the bastion of liberalism. We're having, by the way, on our Thursday episode of the podcast, I think we're going to have Boots Riley, another, West Coast great. This is supposed to be literally the bastion of progressivism. And Hallinan, at a time when no one was talking about progressive prosecutors in the same way that we do now, was ahead of the curve. And he got pushed out of his post because Kamala Harris, as a Black woman, postured like she was going to be better for the community than him. And now look, he's out here bleeding from the head, standing up to the cops. And what's she doing?
Yeah.
She is the cop.
Yeah. She
refers to herself as the top cop of California. This is not, I have never once, despite sometimes feeling the impulse to, tweeted or said Kamala is a cop. I've never done it. You can try to catch me in it. I've never done it. I'm not saying it's wrong, but I was, part of the Bernie campaign. I never did it. I never did it. But I would refer to her, quoting herself as California's top cop.
Right. Self-identified.
Yeah. I wonder which country to go first, or support death squads in first. All of this like hawkish domestic policy, because Kamala Harris doesn't really have that much foreign policy experience.
Right.
But is it going to translate into like
she knows about the Russians.
She knows about the Russians dividing. That's what she knows. Yeah.
She knows that the Russians created the racism.
Yeah. Or they are dividing us by racism.
Right.
But it's gonna translate into like extreme hawkishness when it comes to foreign policy. And it's actually interesting to me how little of that has been discussed, like, at all. I think this is the first presidential election we had where there wasn't even like a debate about foreign policy.
Yeah,
I mean, I can guess
foreign policy not that big, not that important.
Pretty shocking. It's pretty shocking.
Yeah, it's true.
And speaking of, didn't I retweet this Jim Zogby tweet? I thought I had. Oops, I meant to. Jim Zogby, did you see this tweet that he tweeted about Chris? Wait, I think I did. Hold on one second. Oh yeah, here it is. Ready? Chris Murphy said, Trump made Netanyahu look bad, but that's over now. He said that. Chris Murphy.
Who is that?
Chris Murphy,
the senator from California, who's like crazy, who seems good on some stuff, and he's good on Yemen, and then he's just
so bad on some things. He's like so bad on some things. He's like pro regime change in so many countries, but then he's like really good on Yemen. It's weird. But
yeah, it's funny. We said that when Medea Benjamin was on, we were like floating different people that Biden should name, and one of them was like Ro-Khanna, and then Chris Murphy. I was like, well, yeah, except for not really, not Russia stuff. And she's like,
he's also so bad. He's so bad on Iran, Lebanon.
Yeah, he's terrible. Yeah,
he's like really terrible.
He spoke to the American Jewish Committee, and this is from Mondo Weiss that I'm reading. I do think that you have to understand the intersection of some of the things that were happening in Israel, some of the policies of the Netanyahu government, and how they were interpreted by people in this country in the context of the things Donald Trump was saying. When you have the president engaged in this overt war against Muslims, when you have him banning Muslims from coming to this country, suggesting that they are all terrorists, I do think that there are people in the Democratic Party who then are more skeptical of some of the things that Netanyahu is doing and saying about the risks to Israel presented by all Palestinians. So I think that this will become easier now that Joe Biden is president, and that there's less of an I can't believe this, holy shit, and that there's less of an overt anti-Muslim conversation happening in the United States. I think that some of these things ultimately got conflated together. A lot of that changes just by virtue of the administration changing. And then he says, I've been seen a lot of ads on TV against my Democratic colleagues on the issue of Israel that really perverts their position. And I never saw that when I first got to Congress. I didn't see people sort of stretching the truth on the issue of support for Israel in order to win political points. There was a long time decision made by both parties to just sort of stand down on this issue politically and say, let's all use our effort to try to bring down. Okay, what's amazing about this, by the way, is he basically says out loud the stuff that most people like. This is like when Trump and Chomsky sound like the same person because they're making the same argument, but from very different perspectives. Like Trump is like, I don't care about what Saudi Arabia did to Khashoggi because they just bought a bunch of beautiful weapons or whatever. Like his saying, like with Trump, if you don't have an overtly racist anti-Muslim president, Israel is fine. Like it's so much easier for Israel. Like he's literally saying what we on the left criticize Biden for, or everyone else. Like as long as you're not an overt racist, you can get away with whatever. You know, like it's insane that he said that out loud. And he's obviously mad that people dare to run dare to bring up BDS, or I'm sure like that was, code for Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar.
Yeah. Have you been following all of the back and forth with what's his name in Georgia with the BDS statements?
Yeah,
and
Warnock. Yeah. I mean, I don't know what to do. They're Jewish, like if not now, when should just have a Jewish human chain in front of his.
A Jewish human chain.
I mean that in a good way, like a Star of David in front of his house. Yeah, you're right. That's terrible.
I feel like ultimately Democrats not standing their ground when issues like BDS arise and making the case outside of an electoral context, it just sets up people like Warnock, who have occasionally landed on the right side of an issue over the course of time, for getting railroaded. Like we could win the battle. But the ideological battle here.
Yeah, but there's ground that they're standing. It's not like they are. You mean you're saying you're assuming that some Dems are only take the bad position on Israel out of strategy, but don't actually believe it?
No, I mean I think they do it for global political reasons. Like they're invested in it. Right. But I guess that what I'm saying is like it's framed as though, oh gosh, these left ideologies are hurting candidates. Right. But the reality is. The majority of Americans,
it's hurting fundraising. It's hurting fundraising. People aren't voting on BDS. Like people in Georgia.
Although, can I say, like, what's his name? Hal Lyman.
I know you're talking about the
he ran for Congress.
Mel
Hyman. Mel Hyman ran for Congress in North Carolina or South Carolina.
Yeah, one
of the Carolinas. I'm sorry, I think it was North Carolina.
I thought it was
no, it was definitely Carolina. And he was like a Middle Eastern studies professor at a university there, Jewish. And he ran largely on like Palestinian rights issues. Yeah. It like that had nothing to do with his constituents, ostensibly, right? And everyone said he was crazy, but he fundraised like crazy off of that stuff.
Yeah.
I feel like it was around the time they moved the Capitol, and he like did a flyer about it and like fundraised more off of that flyer than any other thing that he had done in his election cycle. And it was like a much closer race than anybody. I mean, he lost, but it was a much closer race.
I meant Democrats. I meant like Democrats picking an issue out of BDS. Like they're not going to lose from supporting it, except for maybe losing funding.
Oh, I totally agree.
Right. Like, that's what I get what you're saying. Right. You're saying, Brie, it's like a self-fulfilling. It's not it's only toxic because people treat it like it's toxic.
Right. And we could have
because of the fundraising around it. And it's interesting, like, Ilhan Omar got all that shit for saying that AIPAC has all this control because they give money. But actually, I was reading through Obama's book because I wanted to find the juicy stuff that makes me hate it more.
Reading next week. Yeah.
And I looked up the part that, where he talks about where he came into office and about Israel and AIPAC. And he said the same exact thing. I was actually surprised he said as much as he did. And I'm surprised it hasn't received any backlash.
Yeah.
But he straight up says that like AIPAC has aligned with Netanyahu and they bully Congress people and they bullied him and they like raised all these issues about him because of his middle name. And, they just assumed he was going to be bad on Israel, but he was great for Israel. But either way, That's what it comes down to is like, it's like Democrats don't lose votes over that issue because people aren't
Right. It's
voting.
fun. Yeah. I mean,
Depending
in
on what
districts
district
they
you're
will.
in.
Yeah.
Depending on
right.
what district you're in. But like in Georgia, maybe Atlanta, because there is like a big.
Well, there's also
big
Christian
Jewish
Zionists,
community.
though. But there are also Christian Zionists who we
That's
shouldn't
true.
forget about.
That's true, but they're Republicans. Christian
Well, Black
Zionists
people
are
love that.
Right. But in
That's
general.
Black people love Palestinians. Black people love they
Well, no, the good. I
identify
mean,
heavily.
yeah.
Like,
unless you're what's his name, Bakari Sellers.
Unless you're Bakari Sellers,
a
in which case you're
liaison
like
to
AIPAC. Israeli settlements. But like, it's just amazing to me that like, because this is an issue that at this point, all the pro-Israel lobbying groups, except for a couple, are pretty much Republican. Like they're not even in the Democratic camp. They actually advocate like against Democrats the majority of the time because they're all like aligned with Netanyahu, who's like a far right crazy.
Yeah.
So,
well, Rana, you only think he's a far right crazy because we had Trump in office.
Yeah.
And now that Trump's gone, Netanyahu is going to seem like the Scranton. You know how it's what is it? The wars between Scranton and Park Avenue. Well, this is going to be a Scranton Tel Aviv cooperation. Pen pal situation.
Maybe like Joe Biden's gonna sniff Netanyahu's shoulder.
Oh my God! But he bragged about how close he was to Bibi. Remember?
Everybody.
I wrote a piece. I wrote a piece at Mondo Weiss where I did a thing of all the people whose besties. Oh God, I gotta find out. But okay, here's the thing. We have to watch. Speaking this coming full circle. John Meacham. Do you guys know who John Meacham is? He's an historian who moonlighted, thought it'd be appropriate to work for Biden, help him with his speeches. He's now on the transition team and not tell MSNBC. Did you hear about this? No, right? Again, it's like I feel like I'm crazy. This should be news. It's the only good news is that at least he like actually did get fired from MSNBC. I mean, it's not like he was going to be face any financial ruin because now he's just working for Biden. But he went on Bill Maher, and I just want to show you one clip. Now, again, nowhere did Bill Maher bring up the fact that there was this weird conflict of interest. Okay, like no one brought that up. I'm trying to find. Oh no! Wait, I'm wrong. Wow, wait, I'm wrong. They brought him back.
They never fire anybody. Look at Jason Johnson.
We should do a montage of Jason Jones, by the way. I know. Jason Jones, who, by the way, is probably most well-known because he's really not very anything. For a lot of people, they may know him as the guy who accused Briahna Joy Gray and Nina Turner of being from the, what is it? The Island of Black Girls. He's on the, he's a regular gig now?
Oh, now they have him like guest hosting Joanne Reed's show. I think they're aiming to move him into a primetime position. Also, what's her name? Tiffany Cross, who I thought was kind of made half of a decent point sometimes. She referred to me as Clayton Bigsby, who's the black white supremacist character from
Dave Chappelle.
And she's also being put up the ranks there. So that's what tells you everything you need to know.
That's a way to get like an MSNBC job, is to just like say really mean racist shit to you on Twitter from like
it is
he's also the one he's also the one who railroaded S&T on cable about the idea, arguing with
Senator
her.
Nina Turner, by the way.
Yeah, sorry, arguing with her that Bloomberg was not an oligarch.
An oligarch.
Jason. Did someone call you and Nina Turner the Diamond Silk?
Oh, yeah, that was the black actress. What's her name from Community? Nicole. What's her name?
You should make a collage of these things.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they have her with what's the one where you're like a McDonald's? What do they have you doing?
Oh, there's one where I'm selling, at the drive-through window at McDonald's, and there's one where I'm wearing a yellow vest and I'm a trash collector, a sanitation worker. Which I don't find to be offensive because I'm not a horrible human being who devalues the labor of other people.
Right. Also, do they know where Martin Luther King was killed?
Right.
Like that thing at Memphis was not actually like whatever you guys imagine it is. Like what would these terrible people do today? Like a some kind of fundraiser for the like human rights campaign or something. I mean, they've done good work, but I'm just saying this is like he was in the streets. There were sanitation workers on strike in Memphis.
Can I tell you, one of my
assholes.
friends from the campaign today, we're on like a comms team, like, you know, text thread. And he's like, I need all of your guys' email addresses. You don't have to send me a mailing addresses. I'm not going to send you don't have to send me a present, but I want to send you something for New Year's. Briahna, he asked me, what size yellow vest do you wear? And he was at somewhere selling those yellow vests.
That's amazing.
I had a good laugh. I was trying to find the pic.
You should start wearing a yellow vest.
Yeah, you should. Yeah.
I mean, it's fun. Right.
You should do it.
I mean, the French. It's like the French thing. Yeah.
Exactly.
So he didn't. He didn't disclose. Yeah. So I'm trying to. He did not disclose. MSNBC contributor John Meacham didn't disclose he reportedly helped write Biden's presidential acceptance speech when commenting on it. Okay, another time we're going to have to watch him commenting on it because I'm really curious if he was like, oh, what a beautiful part. What a beautiful speech. Anyway, so he, you know, goes on, of course, and is not asked about it. He goes on. So I think he faced some kind of short-term dismissal maybe, but he's back. I don't know that. I haven't. But what I do know is that he did get dismissed maybe briefly. I'm not sure what the status is now, but we should look into that because if he's actually still working on MSNBC, that's totally shameful. But yeah, so sorry, Jason, Jason Johnson. Yes, he thinks he's so fucking smart. And he was trying to fight with Nina Turner about the definition of an oligarch. And he just sounded like a totally petty hurt.
And he never backed down either. He doubled down on Twitter even after like all of these like economic experts and like professors were like, no, pretty straightforwardly, definitionally, this man is the ninth richest man in the world. And he has bought out all of these mayors. And he's like, like that's what it is.
Yeah. But he's very, very, laser focused, precision with words when it comes to you being from the island of misfit black girls. So, okay, I want to show you guys. This is John Meacham, who again did not. Bill Maher never asked him, "What's it like? What was it like? Did you ever apologize? You know, do you have anything to say about MSNBC, about working at MSNBC and commenting on the Biden speech that you helped write?" No, but Turncoat Don 3D. Thank you for this. I'm going to show you guys this clip that had me like, I shouldn't oversell it. It's not that big of a deal. It just angered me. You'll see. So this is the clip this was last week's, just 2 days ago. It was Bill Maher. Okay, let's see. Here we go. Crap. Wait, I forgot the audio thing. Sorry, 1 second.
Yvette Nicole Brown, by the way, is the name of the woman from Community. I couldn't remember.
Oh, yeah, she fights with you a lot, right?
She says things a lot, kind of speaking into the void because.
Yeah, she's awful.
Yeah,
I remember her.
I love her show.
Sorry, guys. This will be the final thing. Does anyone have the clip? Okay, hold on. Let's see. Okay, yeah, again, I want to thank Turncoat Don D for sharing this clip. Okay, here we go. Ready? This is Friday.
You have how much poetry is this? You have the pastor of Ebenezer Baptist Church in King's Pulpit in John Lewis's district, standing in a year where more people voted, and without that turnout, by the way, the most important person.
He's the Democrat running.
Yeah. And the most important person of 2020, I would argue, is Jim Clyburn.
Definitely.
Without Jim Clyburn endorsing Joe Biden, Donald Trump would be president for real, not just in his own mind.
Yeah.
That even true? No, Bernie would be president.
Okay. Why do you think it's okay to, first of all, say that at all? Second of all, why do you think that's okay when you were already outed as having a conflict of interest? Like, you should be embarrassed to talk about this. Do you know what I mean?
Help me. I'm sorry. Remind me what the conflict of interest is again?
Oh, that he was working on Biden's speech while.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I know. I mean, isn't it weird that's not a bigger story? I kind of dropped it. I don't remember if I need to bring this up on Crystal and Saga because I do a media thing every week, but I maybe was not doing it for them that week. Sorry, what'd you say?
I said that during that comment, he was writing Biden's speech.
No, this was no. Like he's an analyst, a correspondent or an analyst for MSNBC, and a couple weeks ago, he was either disciplined or fired. If anyone knows the status, they can write in the chat. But he was definitely disciplined and maybe off the air either for good or just temporarily.
We'll bring him back.
He didn't. Well, I think they already have. But what we definitely know is that he did not reveal that he had worked on the Biden speech, and he's working for Biden now. But he didn't reveal he worked on it while he was analyzing it.
No
way.
So
yeah. So then he's on Bill Maher, and I'm watching, and I'm like, they're talking about, and look, I tweeted this, like, there's no like, they're talking about the media market and the conspiracy theories and Q, and of course, I don't actually think that exists on the left, but there is a Fox News thing that exists on the left, which is called MSNBC, and they are talking about Trump voters in like a very, I thought, like, stupid way, but I'm like, okay, are you going to bring this thing up? Are you going to bring this up? Are you going to ask him to comment on it? No, fine. But then he comes out with the James Clyburn thing, and also like states it's almost, he should have just said Bernie couldn't have won. Like, I feel like that has more elegance than saying, like, if he hadn't done that, Trump would be president. Fuck you. No, honestly, you know what? If Bernie hadn't, like, probably Bernie, I'll just say Bernie helped him get elected. Let's just say that. He was out there fucking while Biden was in his basement.
And
Bernie
all
was,
the
like,
other leftists. Like, who knows if he would have won Michigan if Rashida Tlaib hadn't been out there with her door knocking campaign when the Biden campaign had completely dropped all in-person recruiting efforts. Same with Minnesota and Ilhan Omar.
Yeah.
You know, same with all the individual, not just, you know, Stacey Abrams, but all of the Black voters organizations in Georgia. Same with all of the Pennsylvania Black voter organizations that were trying to get people out to the polls in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Even though Joe Biden, who was headquartered there, didn't have any on the ground presence. And even as half the people were pissed off at him for locking up all of their cousins, like, people were begging folks, organizers, leftists. That was a Green Party candidate in Pennsylvania. Leftists were doing the work because they wanted the conditions under which they could organize.
Right.
And now all the accolades, all the plaudits are being siphoned to Jim Clyburn, who, I understand he's a civil rights hero. I will give him all the respect that is due, but not without also acknowledging that he takes more pharmaceutical money than anybody else in Congress. And that is where his allegiances lie when it comes to who is endorsing as for president. And we know Joe. What we know about Joe is that he took the most billionaire dollars. He argued in the last debate that he wanted to preserve the private healthcare industry. He has as a senior advisor, Steve Ricchetti, a pharmaceutical lobbyist, and his investment is in maintaining the status quo in the middle of a global pandemic in which 12 million people just lost their employer-based health insurance. That's their priorities. And I don't care what the race or background of any of these people are involved. That's what the focus needs to be on.
Are you suggesting that I shouldn't have given Biden money yesterday?
Oh my God.
I didn't know he had billionaire backers. He doesn't need my $5.
Oh my God. He should just make a GoFundMe. Let him do a GoFundMe with all of his rich friends.
He basically did yesterday. He literally asked regular people to give him money.
Wait, but Brie, I feel like you didn't know something really important, which is that Clyburn is there is actually no Democrat in the United States as progressive as Clyburn. And I know that from James Clyburn, who said that the other day.
That was outrageous because, I mean, everyone's talked about this at this point, but he had, like, lined up behind him busts of, like, Martin Luther King and all of these socialist civil rights leaders.
Yeah, and he bashed Medicare for all. I mean, he doesn't like Medicare for all. He, like Biden, doesn't like Medicare for all. So I tweeted this. I tweeted something like, wow, John Meacham, who didn't disclose that he was working for Biden while reviewing his speech, glowing about it on MSNBC, just said that if Clyburn hadn't endorsed Biden, Trump would be president. That's funny because I say Bernie would have been president or something. And Tim Matheson from, like, Animal House, he went and, I hate this thing. It's like, they're like, I love Bernie, but, like, no, you don't. You really don't. There's some people out there, to be fair, like, there's some people out there who I think they like him and they're just not very in touch with how politics works. I don't mean that in a condescending way, but some of them will live through the McCarthy era or post-McCarthy era, and they really don't get that, like, socialism doesn't have the same stigma now, or they don't get how authenticity is able to like overcome lots of
Or
other
they
things.
don't, or Katie, they don't need health insurance.
Yeah, sure.
Like they materially just don't need the
they don't
things
have
that
the
other
same,
people need. Like it's not important to them.
Urgency. But this is just like, you don't. And he's like, he would have flamed out. He never got the blue collar or black voters. It's like, well, no. What's the data? No one ever has to.
Yeah, the thing about Bernie, and this is, I think, is a legitimate criticism and something that, I mean, not to be a Monday morning quarterbacker, but I was frustrated with when I raised it during the campaign. I didn't get a lot of like response, is that we did like little to no messaging to older voters. We just didn't. We constantly had all of these videos about youth stuff and college debt forgiveness and free college. And, you know, we would
Social security stuff with Biden. Sorry.
Yeah, I think they were scared. It seemed as though the Bernie campaign was scared to hit Biden on the Social Security issue.
Yeah,
like they should
you
have.
got frozen after you said.
But
you said they didn't have a thing for older voters. There were youth ads and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, everything was targeted to youth, and we had such good programming for older voters. You know, Bernie used to go on TV and he would say, "We're going to expand Social Security so it covers your hearing, your vision, and your dental." And I would be like, don't gesture toward yourself. You're reminding everybody that you're old.
Really
but
funny.
like, you know,
That's so funny.
But you know, there was all of this stuff. You know, we were going to increase people's Social Security checks by like $1,300 or something. There was going to be, expanded coverage. There was going to be, support for home health care workers, all of this stuff. And I didn't see a single ad online or on cable that was targeted towards seniors. We didn't even try. And that's where Biden succeeded. And because older Black voters are really overrepresented among Black voters, that's partly how you can start to tease out what happened there. It wasn't just that, Black people didn't vote for Bernie. It was that old people didn't vote for Bernie. And most of the Black voters are older voters.
Right. Yeah, right. Rania, I know you have to go. I'll stay on for a little bit more. Brie, if you want to hang on for a little bit more, we can always chat more.
I have to be up early, so I have to bow out. But this was really
Yeah.
fun. I'm glad I got to do
Rania,
it with
like,
you guys.
I've always suspected that you were an anti-Semite and anti-Black, and now
now you know it's true.
Yeah.
Now you know for sure.
Not me, not you, us. Or you and us. Yeah. But thanks, Rania, for coming on.
Together.
It's all together. Yeah. And everyone should check out Left Bitches and also
Bye, Rania.
all of her stuff.
Night was great. Have a good night, guys. This is
You
lovely.
too.
Good night. Stay safe.
Enjoy. You too.
Yeah, so I was really upset by that thing. I was just like, I was upset by that. I was upset by and then I went on this thread and people are like, why are you still litigating this? Like, look, of course I loved, especially talking to like you and Rania about how much Biden sucks and how much people who hate Bernie suck. I had Linda Schuster on and she's like, I love her accent, by the way. It's like total Brooklyn. She's like, I don't like messing around with cancel culture, but like if you don't like Bernie, you're canceled. Anyway, but like there is actually beyond that, like I wouldn't just be talking about this all the time for like personal satisfaction. Like there's actually a very important ideological and strategic battle brewing, right? That we see constantly. And we know it's important or else people wouldn't be putting so much stock into pretending that the reason that Biden didn't do as well as he should have, or now I guess that's shifted. The reason that they lost some seats was because of the leftists. Like that's why it's important to not just accept when a paid Biden person who didn't reveal that he was being paid and is also an historian. Like that's why it's important to push back on this.
Yeah, and look, they say don't relitigate the primary, and I used to fall for that. Like, screw it. The fact that you didn't let us have these conversations that needed to be had and to hit you over the brain with it until you finally recognize is why we ended up in the situation where Joe Biden almost lost to this buffoon again.
Or why we're having like don't have Medicare for all and why we won't have it, or why we won't have student loan for cancellation, student debt, cancellation, forgiveness, why we have someone in working on climate stuff who's a total ghoul. Right. It's not just backwards looking. It's like if they can win the argument that these are politically toxic issues, then they get to pretend that what they're doing is for pragmatic reasons as opposed to evil ideological ones.
Which is why I was so proud of the left for working in such tandem and being in such lockstep around the diagnosis after the election results.
Yeah.
I think that the battle's not over, but there have been, more mainstream publications that have had to write about how, well, the story isn't as easy as lefties hurt the ticket, especially when you have AOC and these high profile folks screaming from the rooftop. You know, they messed up attacking AOC on that call, Sandberg or whatever, because a lot of people love AOC. A lot of them love her for the wrong reasons, just because she's like identity politics and cute and young and stuff. But like, regardless of they're liking her for the wrong reasons, the fact that they like her is powerful, because when you insult her, you have to be her ally, and that means an ally to left politics as well.
Right.
And it made people who might not otherwise have taken the progressive diagnosis of what happened on election day seriously have to reckon with it in a real way. And we have to keep doing that, because look, a lot of lefties are like, Black people are never going to vote with us. These South Carolinians, they ruined it for Bernie. Like, screw them, blah, 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 blah. No, the same way you have a lot of focus about America and unindoctrinating people, you need to have that same organizing mindset to where places like South Carolina, and not go in there with like all of these preconceived notions. We need to be talking about talking points, talking about how the civil rights tradition is a socialist tradition, talking about how they've always tried to use the Red Scare, like that communist poster, making our own commercials that can start to create ties within these communities long before the next election season comes up, running local candidates so they can have socialists or progressives or democratic socialists or whatever in their midst that they can use as reference points before we get to whoever it is that ends up running in 2024.
You cut out for a second too. I think you were saying, just like they had these de-indoctrination programs and blah, 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 you have to have them in South Carolina. I don't.
Yeah. And for Trump voters and people in rural America, and how there's so many people who understand you have to do that work. And I think that that's right. No population should be left behind, and Black people shouldn't be perceived as like particularly obstinate or ungettable.
Irredeemable, like the like whatever equivalent of the people. You're saying, like, so there are people on the left who get that demonizing would-be or actual Trump voters as, or just dismissing them as irredeemable is like wrong.
Right. But who have that same attitude towards.
But then you can't, I totally agree. Yeah.
Right. And it's going to take, and I hope that some of these people are willing to do this, it's going to take folks like Cori Bush and Ayanna Pressley. You know, I was going to say, and what's her name from Georgia, but I'm not going to hold my breath on that one. Stacey Abrams. Yeah. But it's going to take some of these progressive folks who have engendered the trust of the public to be willing to criticize other Black leadership. And frankly, it's hard to get people to do that. It's hard to get even, well, you know, we had Killer Mike on the show, and we were, you know, I asked him what he thought about, Clyburn had just made those comments about progressives. And, you know, I love and respect Killer Mike, but I appreciate why he was unwilling to kind of go there, but he was kind of unwilling to go there. And, you know, I think that everyone plays different roles, and some people have to, you know, maintain good relationships and have access to certain kinds of rooms. I get that. But for those of us who are not part of that system, the Cornel Wests of the world, people who are in academia, people who are in the entertainment industry, people like me who don't have a real job and are self-financed, you know, the fact that I am self-financed, the fact that I can never work in this town again and don't in fact work in this town, it means that I can say what I say and be extemporaneous and be truthful. But not everybody has those kinds of opportunities. So that's why I feel like I have a responsibility.
You're like channeling my inner Cornel West. You're like Coltrane, smooth, improvised jazz. Yes, I agree. And it's very it's a hard road, because then also people, like, if you know, obviously, as you said, like, you'll get called diamond and silk if you're critical.
Right.
Yeah. And there is, like, look, I'll be real, like, sometimes I love my leftists who are like done with the Democrats. I really do. And done with like patronage and household, but like, it's also like, we have to convert. I mean, there's different roles, and I like talking. I'll be like, as you know, whatever, obstinate or feisty or whatever against certain people, but like, you can't. Sometimes the you have to be whatever. We all have different roles. I guess that's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
And just dismissing. I'm just like, get so annoyed by what neoliberal corporate shell tool. It's like, I like when people say that about like Cornel West. I'm like, look, who
said that about Cornel West? Oh, because he told people to vote for Biden.
Like, the guy has like a totally reasonable, like, I agree, you know, like, I just when people think that like other people just don't get it.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, he disagrees with you. Like he sees politics in a different way.
Yeah.
And
Brian June here in the chat, who's an all-star, is like, guys like Killer might not be perfect, but we can't dismiss real allies. Stop self-siloing. I think that's right. Like, Virgil and I talk about this all the time. And so do we, obviously, Katie. We've been having some version of this conversation for like 2 or 3 years now. I am in the process of trying to figure out what works best. I loved being on the campaign because there was no better opportunity than just to interface with all these different kinds of people on all these different parts of the country from all these political perspectives and like workshop ways to frame things and how to get through to people. And what I learned from that experience is that I'm like deeply optimistic, and as a journalist as well, you know. But when I learned from those experiences is that I'm like deeply optimistic about the power of using words in politics and persuasion to put together coalitions. But it's not going to happen overnight, and it's not of try and failure. And you have to maintain that. You have to maintain a sense of openness throughout all of those failures. You're gonna hit walls, but I know this sounds like such a platitude, but I am genuinely hopeful about the work that messaging can do to get people with us, because everything is on our side. With very little work, only 4 years of really being a big public figure, Bernie Sanders managed to change all the polls to supporting everything that he believes in. Everyone already is on board. All we have to do is convince a bunch of moderates in real life who think, oh, a better world must not be possible because we've never had a better world before. We've got to deprogram that thinking, which is very toxic. That was the most toxic thing I think that Hillary Clinton did, was to really double down on that. We're breaking up the banks, cure racism. Nothing better will ever happen. Nothing will fundamentally change. Single payer will never ever come to pass.
Never, ever come to pass.
Yeah, that is so toxic. But I think that we can cure that. And I think that if there's any silver lining to this, obviously this horrible crisis we're all living in, is that there are fewer and fewer people who can kind of feel like they're above it and that these issues don't matter to them.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yes, I think it's going to be, it's going to go one way or the other. And it's either going to be, and hopefully it goes well as opposed to darker. And, you know, like David Sirota, who cracks me up, and I love his accent too, but he's like, look, like, what did he say? He's like, oh, I was watching the show. Wait, what is the show? It's based on the Philip Roth book. It's a series.
Oh, the show against the Goldbergs. Oh,
no, not that. Yeah, The Plot Against America. He's like, and like, you know, that's about fascism. And it's like, look, I stay up at night. What wakes me up at night? This was before the election. It's like, I'm afraid that Trump's going to win. The other thing that keeps me up at night is I'm afraid that Biden's going to win, which I hope, but that the Democrats aren't going to deliver, and then we're going to have fascism. And I'm a Jewish person, and that history is and I do think it's true. Like if they don't, the next Trump will just be not as. I mean, that thing that Chris Murphy said is actually incredibly scary and sleazy, and I can't believe he said it. But it's like it's real, which is that there is a danger, and I'm not an accelerationist, but there is a danger in etiquette and normalcy, because guess what? Biden not saying racist stuff doesn't change who, for instance, like Netanyahu is.
Right.
I mean, that's just a random example, but like, it's just so clear. Like, that's such a dangerous, like, shield.
Yeah. No one has hurt Black people more than Bill Clinton. No one has hurt poor people more in recent American history than Bill Clinton. Reagan tried to cut the social safety net. Right. But because he was a Republican, there was some level of resistance.
It takes a liberal.
It takes a liberal. Yeah. Is that Thomas Frank? Does he say that?
Yeah, it's a quote from in Listen Liberal. He quotes someone who says that about something, who says, like, I think it's, what is it? It takes a liberal to slash some funding, so to slash spending or something. Yeah.
Yeah. And what is going to happen, like you couldn't say this before the election. I shouldn't say it now because, you know, people are going to do what they do. But I fully accept, I've said this to you before, Katie, I don't think accelerationism is wise only because you're saying I'm going to incur an enormous amount of risk for very little, you know, very, very ambiguous payoff. Like there's no certainty about what is actually going to happen. And I personally don't feel comfortable gambling with people's lives like that. Like it's a trolley problem. it's a roll of the dice, and I just don't want to be the one responsible, and I will acknowledge that.
Right.
But if you're going to tell people to vote for Biden, you can't credibly do so without also acknowledging the very real, it's not a risk, it's a known outcome.
Reality, yeah.
That people are going to care less about issues that are going to persist. And the over-under of what that means is a different kind of trolley problem all in of itself.
I don't know what this trolley problem is, by the way. Is this
the trolley? It's like it's a philosophy thing where it's like, if there's like a train track and it splits, and the way it's on right now would kill 5 people, but you could turn it so it would kill only 1 person.
Yeah.
Some people think it's unethical because to switch it, even though you're killing fewer people, now you are responsible for that 1 person.
You gotta kill the 1 person.
Whereas before, if you don't do anything at all, you're not responsible for anybody's death, but 5 people die.
Yeah,
And
that's
so,
that's actually, it's an interesting thing. But I actually think it's like the obvious it's like on a selfish level, I wouldn't maybe want to touch it, but the outcome, the right thing to do is to kill those people. That person.
Yeah, so yes,
opinion.
I think obviously the Good Place does the show. The Good Place does a good little episode on this, but
I gotta watch it.
In fact, I think that voting for Biden, people presume you're pulling the lever to kill the 1 person instead of 5, but no one's really talking about that whether or not it's truly 1 person over there. The real scenario is like there's a box. There's just a box. And there's a number of people in there. There's like a screen or something. So you can't see how many people. You know that 5 people are going to die under this circumstance. And you don't really know how many people are going to die on that side.
Yeah.
Or like you roll a dice and however many, it could be 1, it could be 6.
Yeah.
Right? It could be better, it could be worse. But that's what you're dealing with. And I'm really frustrated.
Know for sure, maybe it's like, I guess, or the parallel would be like, for sure 5 people will die.
Right.
Like if you if you
don't do anything,
it'll be like, or if, I mean, even I guess now I'm not in either case. Let's say the choice was though you had to. Let's say if it's the voting parallel, let's say you had to. I guess non-voting is not doing anything in this parallel, but there's no value.
No, they're not voting. They would call that a vote for Trump. Like non-voting isn't really a part of the scenario.
Right. So voting for Trump is like you push and kill the 5 people, and voting for Biden in theory, right?
Yeah.
You
direct it toward lesser harm, lesser evil.
Right. Yeah. But really what you're saying is like, there's an unknown, we don't know if it would kill it could be like 0 to 3 people, 0 to 10 people, and some of them may survive, but you don't know.
Yeah. In fact, I think the reality is the part about the vote blue, no matter who, that really bothered me. I mean, there's many parts. I wrote an article about it. People can look at it on the current affairs, and
we had her on to talk about it.
It's true. But the true reality is that there's ambiguity on both. There's more ambiguity about what happens when we vote for Biden than people are crediting, and as a relative measure toward what we think we know Trump is going to do. So I think that what Trump will do is somewhat overblown. I think, there was all of this, he's a fascist talk, and now Joyanne Reid immediately wrote this like sympathetic tweet about him. People are saying that he shouldn't be prosecuted for his crimes. All of the blue MAGA people are very eager to let Trump off the hook so he can go back to hosting a TV show or something.
Right.
And it's the leftists who are like, well, wait a minute. You told me this guy was a fascist, an Islamophobe, a racist, a cheat, a self-dealing, a war criminal, a rapist, everything in the world. And now you're saying he shouldn't be prosecuted for anything? He should be held accountable for any of those things? You guys tried to impeach him like 8 months ago? Did we all just forget about this?
Yeah.
And so which is it? Is it
narrative.
Pick a narrative.
It's like the thing with the Putin thing I can't stand. And I just posted, by the way, an amazing clip of Stephen Cohen, which I recommend everyone watch. He was so brilliant, the late Stephen Cohen, fighting with Max Boot, where I bring this up because it's like Putin is a dangerous threat. Donald Trump is a dangerous threat. And they want Donald Trump to be threatening Putin. It's like, no, which one is it? You're going to pay for his war budget and tell him to be more hostile towards Putin while also saying Putin is a nuclear. Anyway.
Right on, sister.
Yeah.
Right. And I have to drop in here because if we're going to do columns for the left, this is something that I wish more people would talk about. a bunch of Democrats, including Elizabeth Warren, voted to increase Donald Trump's war budget by $82 billion, and the cost to cancel all medical debt is, drumroll please, $81 billion.
That's insane.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing we could be doing with our money instead of giving Trump a budget that he didn't even ask for.
And voting against cutting the Pentagon. That's a different thing?
I think that was a different thing. I don't know.
Can you just address the argument that I love, which is that it's not fair to have universal stuff, because then if we do like cancel debt, student loans, then that means that the poor and working class are paying for rich people to not have to pay for college.
Yeah, man, could talk about this all day. So we believe in progressive taxation, correct?
Right. Yes.
So if someone like me is an archetype for, you don't want to cancel my student debt because I'm an affluent attorney and I don't deserve it, that's fine. I'm in a higher tax bracket. Just take about. Now, I'm not actually in a high tax bracket, but like if we're talking to people who are actually affluent, let's do the wealth tax, which, by the way, a majority of Republicans support. Obviously, a majority of Democrats support, but I'm trying to point out that it has broad bipartisan support. If the idea of progressive taxation is that if anybody were ever paid out too much, like how people get mad about the idea of sending out $2,000 checks to everyone, and they're like, "Oh, does Bill Gates send a $2,000 check? Who cares? Send it to him.
Yeah,
we're about to tax his pants off. Right. We're about to get it right back. Who cares?" But what's really at risk is somebody who maybe earned $100,000 and then lost their job and is trying to support their family, not getting a $2,000 check because they fall through the cracks of your mean tested program. And I'd rather give Bill Gates that $2,000 a million times over than to allow someone who really needed the money to get cut out of the program. Yeah. And you get it back through taxation.
Right. You get back through taxation, and also like rights as opposed to entitlements or charity are very important. Like, and that's why I say this all the time, but like there were no Social Security queens. Like they can't really as much, and they still do this. Like, and then people are like, well, that's not true because white people are still like oppose things that because they think they're good for Black people, even though it's like, okay, yeah,
I hate this argument.
That's like, okay, forget that for now for a second.
It's like wishful thinking. It's like really racist wishful thinking by libs who needed an excuse to not support things that would actually help the Black and brown people they love to use as a shield.
Yeah. You know what's really funny on this is Reverend William Barber, who I really want to have on. He said, because he said like white liberals love talking about, like prefer talking about the like the racism of poor whites more than their own or something, you know. It's like because
it's like, I know I'm like a broken record with this stuff, but that poll that came out after Hillary lost that showed that 40% of Trump voters thought Black people were intellectually inferior and violent and all of these different metrics of racism, and all of the Hillary people were showing it saying, oh, this is who these people are, look at these animals, it's terrible, they're irredeemable. And the same chart, I was like, are we reading the same chart? Because this chart shows that Trump voters are worse than Hillary voters, but a still solid 25 to 30% of Hillary voters think the same thing at all these categories. So like, okay, Trump voters are 20% more racist than you guys, and you have no problem with me being in a coalition with you. And that's even considering that the Hillary voters are going to be more Black, more non-white. So if you presume that the non-white people in there, the Black people at least, aren't going to say yes to all of those racist things, imagine if we took the Black people out of the Democratic pool and measured how well they did against the Trump voter. Yeah. Seems to me like they would be pretty even Stevens, right? The argument that, look, here's what it is. If you believe that white people won't do anything that is perceived to help Black people because it's against their own self-interest, that is a really solid argument for universal programs, right? Yes, that's a really strong argument for pitching programs that help everyone. You can go to Iowa, don't even have to say Black, you don't even have to say brown, you have to say Asian, don't say Native. Just go to Iowa and talk to white people and say, this is going to help you, honey. Like,
Yeah.
Go off. This is for you. This is for you. This is for you. Then you can waltz all over to Baltimore and say the exact same thing to that group. Guess what? It's the same policy. It actually just helps everyone poor.
Right. Right.
Like, that's the beauty of it. And yet, these same people want to holler at the top of their lungs about how white people won't go for anything that is like red as black or for black, and then say that the only policies they want to support are ones that are explicitly for black people. So if you don't call it the American Plan for Racial Equity and the 1619 Equality Project, then they think that it's not going to help black people. And it's like, which is it? Like, I'm all for racially targeted programs, but you're the one telling me that they don't work because white people are too racist for them. So I think we should keep trying. I'm all for reparations. I think that we should talk about it and educate people on it and raise awareness the same way that Bernie did all these other social programs. But meanwhile, back at the ranch, as Nina Turner would say, people are dying. And what kind of craven lunatic are you that you would be opposed to universal health care in the middle of a global bloody health crisis? Because
I think it's just, I mean, I think that they are ghouls. Like they oppose universal programs. And then I think this is the big challenge, I think, for us on the left, is that like we have to siphon off, I don't know, divide and conquer, kind of. One side we conquer, one side we bring into the fold, because there are people who are good, like, in good faith, think they hear an argument that it's not fair to support rich people's free college because that's just not fair. And like, same thing and I can see how people are like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But the people who are pushing that for the most part are just like evil.
It's Pete Buttigieg, who knows very well from his time at Harvard and Bain that rich people don't have student debt. I don't know how many times have I said this. I'll keep saying it again. There's an 8% interest rate on these loans, guys. Rich people get rich because they know what to do with their money.
Yeah.
I mean, they inherit it and all the kind of things.
Yeah,
but like ultimately they are very smart about money and they have advisors and they know that you don't take out an 8% interest loan and just sit on it for fun. Like, that is irresponsible money management. Nobody would do that. Nobody wants that. Like I said earlier, home mortgage loans are like 2 to 3%. Like you can take out money. Rich people borrow money from other rich people for free, no interest, right? No one who doesn't absolutely have to will take out that money. Now, there's plenty of people who make $100,000 a year, $200,000 a year, who still have to take out loans because no one can afford to pay $80,000 a year. No one can afford to give up, 3/4 of their salary to pay for their kids to go to college. Or law school or grad school or whatever. Like that's, so you can be, I understand that there's an enormous wealth gap between someone who earns $100,000 and the average American salary, which is $50,000. But you guys, you can't lose sight of the fact that there are 6 human beings in America who own more wealth than the bottom 6%. So I know that 100,000, I don't want to be one of those people who's like, oh, $500,000 isn't even that much money in New York because of how expensive real estate is. Like, I know how frustrating that is for working people to hear. And so I'm not saying that. But I am saying that like we shouldn't be fighting against people who ultimately are also relatively precarious when the overwhelming glut of wealth is held by the top fraction of 1% of people. And that's where the battle is. And we need to be able to, it's irritating. People with brownstones are irritating. But if we can link up with the people who make $100,000 and $200,000 and $300,000 a year with the interest, the people who make $30,000 and $40,000 and $50,000 a year, that's all of us. That's the 99%. And that's the coalition that we need to get that money from the top fraction of 1%.
Yeah, I agree. And it's also like, again, then there's a whole conversation of just normalizing things as like stuff that society gives you because they should, as opposed to like something you have to, like the stigma of means tested stuff, the like kind of the shame that goes into it, the stigma, the like ghettoization, the otherizing, all that shit that all these people, if you actually cared about the people who are these groups that you claim to care about, you would get that it's like in everyone's best interest, except for Buttigieg or the top 1% or like the very ineffective but overly paid Sally Albrights, who like is so dumb that someone said something about means tested program. She's like, I don't understand your question. But I think that's a scary thing. That scares me because I get, again, like, we got to do some explainers and it just,
God bless the Gravel gang. And I think the point that you're making about the ethical arguments here are right. I don't mean to breeze over them. I think that for a lot of folks, especially folks who have experienced the butting up against the wall of like, oh my God, what do you mean I can't have this healthcare that it's going to be life-saving because my insurance decided this isn't covered anymore, who have, firsthand experience the inhumanity of the system, that kind of ethical appeal works really well. I say this on our episode that's releasing tomorrow, but we had Virgil and I, the episode is Virgil and I attended a Democratic Socialist of America recruitment call on Thursday, and we included parts of the call in the episode and answered a bunch of questions about why be a socialist and the arguments we should be making, and a lot of the similar stuff we're talking about here. And I mentioned the fact that on Hear the Burn, I talked to a colleague and her dad, who are from Venezuela. The dad immigrated from Venezuela, and he loved Bernie but hated the word socialism. So we were kind of talking through the reasons why, and in the course of this conversation, at the end of the day, he was like, "Yeah, I like what Bernie stands for."
I didn't hear you.
Has
said
had
I like.
Health concerns. I have a pre-existing condition.
He said, "I like
Sorry?
what Bernie stands." You
Did I
broke up
freeze?
a little bit. Yeah, you said he likes what Bernie stands for.
Oh, sorry.
But he doesn't like the socialist label.
Because it's common sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And he said that Bernie, what he believes in is common sense. Because I have a pre-existing condition and my daughter has had these health concerns, it just makes sense to me that these things should exist as human rights. I don't like the word socialism for, reasons.
Yeah.
But, I think that rights framework is really powerful, and it's very difficult for anyone to argue against, and it exposes these corporatists for who they are. When you waltz on TV and you say, I just believe that nobody should die because they're too poor to get treatment.
Yeah.
What can they say? Well, Biden thinks so too. He doesn't, because under his plan, healthcare plan by design, 10 million people remain uninsured. And either you believe in their right or not.
Right. I mean, their response is that it's utopian. We can't do that. We're working towards that. The real response that's the most disarming one, I guess, is like, well, Republicans will never sign on to that.
Right. Well, a majority of Republicans support it.
Right.
So what are you doing enough outreach and talking about this issue to Republican voters? Or are you in lockstep with Republican voters, fear mongering against these policies because both you and Republicans are being paid by the same industry?
Yeah. Or in lockstep with Republican politicians.
Right.
Yeah.
Politicians.
Yeah.
And no one on TV, if even one person could regularly say that on TV, we'd be in a different world, but they know well enough not to let those people on. And the only people that'll let us on, Katie, are like Fox News. Megyn Kelly invited me on her show, on her podcast. Greta, what's her name?
Sustin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Either her or the other one who kind of looks like her, but younger. Laura.
Oh, Ingram's. Yeah.
Ingram. One of them invited me on during the campaign. I can't forget which, and they didn't want me to go on. But I was like, you should let me go.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I don't know. Tucker Carlson
is really ruthless. It's true. Songs for K says 8% is ruthless. It really is.
It's usury.
Yeah.
It should be illegal. And
know.
those are federally backed. So basically our government is basically having to bail because we die with this debt. Like people just die with it.
Yeah. The healthcare stuff really is the wedge. I think it can be the not the icebreaker, like the watershed thing, because it is so indefensible.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I think this doing all that stuff, but like it is just such the literal life and death thing, man. Yeah. I think that's what and obviously the climate stuff is also pretty morally relevant, or life and death. But I think that that's something that it shouldn't, but we have to do more re-education on or deprogramming on, because so many people just, but the healthcare stuff is pretty straightforward. The one thing that we have to get rid of is that ridiculous, the government wants to, that the idea that when the government is at all involved, they're corrupt, as opposed to the insurance companies or farmers. You know what I mean? That's something, but it's pretty,
That's what my Gravel video was about. Because I feel like that, when I'm talking to people across the ideological spectrum, they understand corruption. The only difference is shifting that responsibility from, the government is corrupt and gets nothing done, to the people who've purchased your representatives are corrupt, and that's why they can't get anything done. And that's a pretty easy shift to make. Like acknowledge, well, there's some government waste. There's some stuff that shouldn't be happening, you know, like, but it's not, I'm not ideologically committed to big or small government. That's not, I mean, like, I don't care. I mean, I don't think it can really function if it's like small, but like, I don't want big government to have big government. I just want the corporations who are hell bent on exploiting all of us to be kept in line. And that requires some regulation.
Yeah.
Like, if I'm going to be governed by corporations or governed by the people, I want to make sure that we have a democracy. Like, because laissez-faire doesn't mean you're free. It means that corporations have free reign to F up your life.
Right. It's also kind of like the government, like state media. Like, okay, what about corporate media? Like, no one ever talks about like the conflict. It's like RT. Oh, terrible, because the government. It's like, okay, well, what do you want to look at with you know, whatever, MSNBC, NBC, who owns that stuff, and Comcast, all that stuff. But some final questions. Cameron's questions. Let's see. Bill Cole says, I don't think M4A, wealth tax, and Green New Deal is going to win back the blue collar. Examine framing that works on these people. Framing is bad now. I don't know what the I think Bill has a father.
I don't know. I would just
you would. Oh, by the way, guys, he has a father or grandfather who what? I can't remember who doesn't like Bernie. That was a I'm just giving you some background. By the way, everyone like the show. Yeah. I don't know what that. I think all those things can be used to. I mean, all those things are popular among. It's all about the framing.
Right. Like he's like, don't use those. And Medicare for all isn't a framing issue. He's like, the framing is bad, and then listed all these policies that aren't going to work. It's like, well, it's even by your own admission in this question, it's like the policies aren't the problem, the framing. So I agree that framing can always be improved.
Yeah, but
the policies I think are good.
Yeah. John says, great show. Katie and Brie are a good Sunday night hangout, and thanks for introducing Rania. Brie, get an Ethernet cable.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, you got it for the don't believe polls about M4A when the poll lacks context. Just the fact that the policy would have the context of who proposes it would change it. Hold on, sorry, I'm trying to I already said that one. Next Trump will be a TikTok rapper libertarian. Fantomas Fanto says. Also, thank you very much to Brad, who's the mod and also helps me make sure I don't miss the super chats. And everyone, by the way, make sure that you like and subscribe to this channel and share this link. Just going to read a couple. Okay. Fantomas Fanto says, Air America blew it, building a DLC factory, RIP. Did I already say Mariposa saying Brie is one of my most favorite people? Thank you for always being that point. Oh, I did. Okay.
Thank you, Mariposa.
Sean Carter says, Brie, run for something, anything, please.
Guys, I've already said too much.
I know. Okay. Ruth P. Oh no, I read that. Sorry about that. JB says, Brie, please write that article about Black Congress members. It's sorely needed. In fact, make it about the entire CBC. And I agree on it's unfortunate it has to come from a Black person. So ridiculous. Hart Hagen, thank you for your support. Donnie Nunn suggested looking into the Zeitgeist documentaries. Samuel Wambold, how do you all feel about Simone Sanders' appointment? Oh, was she appointed to something?
No, apartment. I thought it said apartment. Did it say apartment? It said appointment. Oh, then I misread it. I have no idea. I haven't seen anything.
What is she? Yeah.
Wait, can I promote something also?
Yeah, of course.
I just got the alert. We posted the part of the DSA, like the part of our episode from tomorrow that's a DSA call. Yeah. Just got posted to our YouTube page, which is really under subscribed and paid attention to. Yeah. So after this, not right now, but once we close, if you guys can go over to the Bad Faith YouTube page and subscribe and like that video.
And I'll put a link to that also in here. Everyone in this chat, if you haven't liked this, you should really like now. Jordan Allen, woke imperialists are the more effective imperialists. The left in America needs to be better at seeing through the illusion. Expanding war and not ending them is never okay. Brie, are you there? You froze?
I'm
No,
there.
you're there. Many of us here, Joseph Hansey writes, many of us here sure would love a Katie Halper DSN episode miniseries. It's rich with concepts that would be well cultivated by you and your guests. Let's do it, Brie.
Let's do it. Look, I think that we're kind of making Star Trek happen. It's like fetch. Everyone's talking about Star Trek now on the internet. I kind of feel like we made it cool, guys.
Well,
join the Starfleet Academy with me.
Maybe we can interview Michelle Forbes.
Please. Ooh, sorry.
Oh, wait, you met her when we did that struggle session thing. You guys were
so
excited. Yeah.
Catherine Janeway, Kate Mulgrew, who's also one of the lead actresses from Orange is the New Black, was a big AOC fan. So I think that's promising.
Cool. Awesome. Rue Netanyahu, my grandmother never trusted a man who parts his hair at the lobe. That's really funny. That's a great line from Jelperman. That is really good. John Meacham is a historian like Jason Johnson and Sebastian Gorka are doctors, and Tom Parker was a colonel. Jordan Allen, haha, that I was so late to this live, had to work a double. FML, this is a really good panel. Looking forward to what I've missed. Mariposa says, Biden won the election. He did not earn a single vote. Can we not let South Carolina decide the next Democratic president? Please and thanks. Here's my question. Okay, when people talk about Clyburn, like, was there anything untoward about his endorsement, or was it just that like everyone did it at the same time? Because, or do people not usually? I don't really like. I obviously dislike his politics, and I'm mad at him.
No, he didn't do anything. I don't think he did anything wrong.
Right.
Except that I think that he endorsed somebody who was going to sell the interest of his constituents downriver.
Sure.
But there wasn't anything shady or illegal about, And the thing is, we saw the exit polls. A significant percentage of South Carolina voters said that they voted on the basis of Clyburn's endorsement.
Yeah. Right.
So, it worked.
There was, I just don't. What I obviously reject is the idea that had that not happened, Trump would be president.
No, I think if anything, remember
the data on that. Yeah,
the polls going into South Carolina had Bernie really close to Biden in a way that shocked us all, frankly. And maybe the polls are obviously inflated and wrong, but we were thinking that we might even went it was very close. Like Bernie was doing very strongly in the state. So I don't know if the polls were just really, really off, whether they were inflated intentionally to give us a false sense of comfort. Or whether things just really changed that much because of Clyburn's endorsement.
Who had he endorsed before? Because I was watching him the interview where he talked about he what is it? Humble progressive bragged, haughty progressive bragged. He said that his candidate had dropped out. I was trying to remember who he was. He a boot? Did he Harris?
I don't remember. I don't remember. I would guess Harris. I can't see him. I don't know. I don't remember.
Yeah. Brian June said, this is a good point, Brie. People also should realize that the senior Medicare often has gaps and seniors often need to buy supplemental. This is the thing I was like, Patrick Emmett says, the storm is spreading. Keep the ideological battle brewing because it matters. Jonathan Camden, I love it when people I follow on Patreon team up. Bobby Johnson, in counties where Dems don't have a realistic chance to win, should progressives run in GOP primaries?
I'm sorry, what was the beginning of that?
Sorry. In counties where Dems don't have a realistic chance to win, should progressives run in GOP primaries?
I've always thought, being a Republican doesn't mean anything at this point. They're not even committed to small government as an ideology. They're not committed to non-interference in state affairs. They want to send the national troops into every protest. They have no ideological mooring. So I really think that you could credibly and ethically, frankly, run as a Republican. It's just a letter at this point.
I agree.
And,
if you're good,
I have a family friend who's an established Black doctor kind of, very elite and very credible, like a Ben Carson type of, not crazy obviously, and with better politics. And I've always said that he should run for office as a Republican because why not? He has all the bootstrappy stuff that Republicans love. He grew up in a very bad neighborhood and family environment and is one of the most elite cardiologists in the country. It's all the stuff that they like.
Yeah.
But he could actually just do good things.
Right.
The Republicans would love to claim him.
He's a good version of Ben Carson.
Yeah.
That guy's a psycho. When you hear him describing the brain surgery he performed on kids, it's really weird.
What does he say?
He's like, when I look into their, it just doesn't sound normal. It doesn't sound like healing. It's very weird. I'll find some of it and we'll play it next time.
Okay.
Jelperman writes, were it not for the Clinton impeachment, Social Security would be gone by 1998. I thank Monica Lewinsky every day. Yeah, that's Thomas Frank says that. That Clinton and what's his name, Newt, were going to work together basically to try to get rid of Social Security. And then once the Monica Lewinsky thing happened, he was too toxic for Newt. Kimberly McNaught, sending love from Australia, waiting for the progressive takeover so we can take notes and do the same. Brian June says, Brie, I want to start a podcast / channel to add an Asian Pacific Islander LGBT voice to the left. Would you consider being a guest? I can compensate. Love you both. What about me? You're not gonna ask me? Yeah, we're spousal contract. You got to hire both of us.
Right. Only if Katie can come too.
Yes. Yeah. Come on. John Z. Great show, Katie and Brie. I read that already. Sorry. Fantoma says, like the show or Vatican ninjas will come for you. Definitely true. Jan JC Nova, Clyburn helped Biden, but Bernie historically won the primary vote in the first 3 states and got less free media than Biden did. That's true. Anyway, well, Brie, this was so great. This is me being like,
I'm sorry. I'm such being a dead horse.
What? You're so what?
Oh, I think I broke up. I was going to say, never forget that Bernie won the most diverse state that had voted up to that point, which was Nevada. And after which, Soledad O'Brien, who is herself Latina, Afro-Latina, said, I'll wait until an actual diverse state votes before I assess how good Bernie Sanders is doing.
She said that?
Yeah, she tweeted it. It's in my.
I think I knew that, but I think I didn't realize that. I for whatever reason, it like left my brain that Nevada is a diverse state. I mean, obviously I know that, but I just like I didn't put it together.
Oh yeah, and Bernie won 70% of the Latino vote, a vote that it turns out was really crucial in the general election. Who could have known? Guess what? I was trying to actively pitch articles in like February about how crucial the Latino vote was going to be in the general election, how Bernie was dominating with Latino voters, and how people needed to start reporting that as part of Bernie's electability pitch. And no one took the bait.
Terrible. Really terrible.
Yeah.
Brian, I don't know why she hates. I mean, yeah, I don't even know. Yeah. So Brie, where can people find you? Tell people about how they can support you and your work.
Yes. Well, Virgil and I are very proud of our not so new anymore podcast. We'll be about a month old soon, 2 months old soon.
Yeah.
Yeah, we started September 10th. So, we're a little over 2 months.
It was close, Brie.
Yeah.
If you started September 11th, then you could be like, if anyone forgot about your podcast, you'd be like, you promise you never forget.
Katie.
Sorry.
Katie.
I'm from New York. I know people who died in that, but it is a terrible. Okay, ready? Knock, knock. I'll do this after Brie's not on. I mean, I already made the thing that was off color, but
well, you guys should. We've been doing really intimate episodes on the premium streams. A lot of one-on-ones where I like plumb Virgil's depths, and many people are saying that our last episode from, I guess, last Monday was our best yet. Like we go out of our ways to put together these panels and like with the scheduling nightmare. And then everyone's like, oh, we just like the one-on-one episodes anyway, which is cool for me because it's a lot less work. And I enjoy talking to Virgil and like we're getting to know each other on the air. And it's really actually kind of delightful. So please subscribe to get access to those at patreon.com/badfaithpodcast.
Bad Faith Podcast, yeah.
And you can also obviously listen to our Thursday episodes for free wherever you get your podcast.
Yeah. I like these. Like, I actually really enjoyed interviewing you a couple of episodes ago. I think it was the election night stream, and like I have to go through it, but there's such good chats like about food and about your parents and about like living abroad. Yeah. Sometimes it's fun to do those things. Yeah. And I had a really long, like, he was so drunk, Joshua Kahn Russell. Do you know who he is?
I don't think so.
He's been on. He used to go on Michael Brooks a lot. He's an organizer. And it was like got into all this stuff, like I don't know, sex stuff and like Jewish stuff. It was really fun. Yeah.
We should definitely do a lefty relationship pod. I've been trying to trick Virgil into doing it.
Let's do it. I'll do it. I mean, before the show, guys, we were talking about that stuff, so it's always really
but what it's like out here in the streets.
In the streets, yeah. Yeah, no, I like doing that. I'm torn between doing like I guess I should do, I'll release I got to release more video, I think, on Patreon, because like people who don't watch the live stream will probably like it. But it's like I'm also trying to grow my YouTube channel. I don't know.
Katie, you were the hardest working woman on the left.
Oh, well, thank you.
You're a person on the left. Like you hustle like nobody's. Half the time I'm like trying to find a guest, and then I look at my YouTube alerts, and you've just interviewed them, and I'm like, we keep getting scooped.
No, we got to cross promote. We do cross promote. I got to get Killer Mike and Boots, not together.
I mean, together would be dope.
Yeah, that would be great.
That's a scheduling nightmare also.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much to Brie. Thank you so much for everyone watching. Thank you so much to Brad. Kelly, I think, was here for a little bit. I know she saw the podcast. She said the live stream. She said something nice. And yeah, I will see you guys Wednesday. I'm going to do a show Wednesday. I don't know if people are going to be traveling or whatever for Thanksgiving. I'm going to do a show Wednesday. I haven't figured out the guests yet, but it'll be a good one. And I want to do a Thanksgiving themed show. So obviously I'm going to interview an Italian American. Hey, but I do want to do a Thanksgiving themed show. Gerald Horn would be great too. He's so smart. Have you guys had him on?
Nuh-uh.
I'd have him on.
Okay, I'll add him to my Katie crossover list.
Yes, Katie crossover list. Yeah. Okay. I will see you guys, Wednesday, as you know, at 9 p.m. And make sure you subscribe. Like everyone should be liking it now. And thank you guys again for watching the show.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, Brie.